Hi, I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy. And Nicolas Maduro, no longer dictator of Venezuela. It's going to kind of control the headlines. We are going to keep the same order of personality, politics, religion, Maha, and then go into geopolitics country by country. The thing is, almost every single country is affected in some way, shape, or form by this Maduro thing.
Yep.
And I did have a viewer send me a couple videos about it. I watched both videos. I liked them. I liked the one video a lot more than the other. I think we'll talk about it as we get into it.
Yes, thank you, Rafa, for sending those over. And yeah, since Nicolas Maduro is headlining essentially everything, the capture and arrest of dictator Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela, we are going to go into some other news as well, because I'm sure you've heard it all. We will analyze and talk about it and kind of say where we think things are going, but it's only been, 2 days now? So there's still, I think, a lot more to discern, discuss, and go into in the coming months, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, the next 3 months are going to be crucially important to see if they can kind of secure the country. And I know the former vice president has kind of taken over now. She's still in control of the military, so it's nice. The U.S. military does not have to have a boots on the ground presence right now. The former Venezuela military is still running the country. Hopefully they have a change of heart in the way they're treating the people there. That being said, we do have hopefully a new way to read comments today where we can bring them on the screen. So we'll try that in just a sec.
Yes. So first of all, hello, Nan. Thank you for being here. Good evening. And also Rafa, hello. And well, we will try to have a slightly, because Rafa says, so I guess we won't have a Candace-free stream, right? We only have about 2 stories. We did look into what she said earlier today, like just now, but trying to avoid the subject a little bit until I guess she comes up with something else, because right now she's just complaining about things.
Yeah, and I know we put Maduro on the cover. We're going to cover Maduro and personality politics, how other social media influencers kind of took this. We're going to get into religion, Maha, and then when we get into the U.S. section, I think it's going to be heavily influenced by Maduro. So if you're looking for the Maduro stories, it's probably more in the second half of the show, but we do skim through it a little bit in the first half as well.
And please do as Nan did, who says liked, thumbs up. Thank you so much. And don't forget to subscribe. We are trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. We're just about there for the watch hours to be able to at least apply to monetize. But it is important for us to try to monetize this channel as well as the Spanish one and keep growing them, because otherwise we will have to find other things to do.
Yeah, it's been an absolute huge help for everybody that has become a subscriber. It's a small channel. We're growing. I understand we're getting throttled because we're broadcasting out of Mexico City and we're trying to get an English audience. Our Spanish channel is doing good, but if you're not subscribed to this one, please do so. It really does help. We're almost to 1,000 subscribers, which means we can do this on a permanent basis if we can get there. Yeah. Let's get into the first story though. And I'm glad to see it looks like the comments worked when you brought them on screen.
Yes, it looks like they are working. Hopefully it's an easier, better way to read your comments and have people know what we're actually talking about and responding to. So yeah, let's get into our personality politics section, which is everything to do with social media and stuff.
I'm angry. I've had enough of these people.
Let's get into the first story here.
Yes. Okay, hold on. There we go. So from Grimalda's quote, back in October, Nick Fuentes explained his position on Venezuela and how an American first foreign policy differs from a neocon one. Who cares if Venezuela is run by some corrupt petty tyrant? Just take their S.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily agree with all the sentiment here, but he is quickly becoming the leader of America first, because Candace and Tucker Carlson are just going in a insane direction lately.
Yes.
And that's where inside this Trump administration, you really need to evaluate the specific people that are involved. Because what I always liked about Trump is this is the language that he would use. When he said about the Iraq war, he said, look, you went in, take the oil. And when he was talking about Syria, he says, who cares about Assad? Just kill ISIS. In other words, what are the tangible American interests? Insofar as ISIS is real and not a CIA Mossad creation, they were spreading this ideology in America and Europe that is actually harming us. So let's just kill them. And to the extent that we're in Iraq, who gives a shit whether they vote? Just take their oil. Just have American energy companies come in and let's just take the energy. It's transactional. That's how the world is. That's realism. We are in a great power competition with China and Russia for the alignment of middle powers for the alignment of resource-rich countries. And we're in a battle with Russia and China over supply chains and the resources that fuel the supply chains. Specifically things like energy, rare earths, minerals, and then the shipping routes that transit those raw materials. So in this new era of competition, who cares whether Iran is Islamist or monarchist? You know, people say, I had this debate with Gavin. He said, you don't want regime change in Iran? I'm like, who cares? Like, seriously. Who cares if women in Afghanistan vote? Like, these people are primitive. It doesn't even matter. Who cares if Putin's a war criminal? Yeah, it's Russia. They're brutal. Who cares if Venezuela is run by some corrupt, petty tyrant? It's South America. They're all like that. It's always been like that. Just take their shit. Get as many countries on our side of the ledger so that we can take their shit. I don't know. Is that complicated? But on the other side of this debate, you have the ideological neocons like Rubio, like John Ratcliffe, the CIA director. You have these other people that insist, no, that's not good enough. We need a U.S. puppet in place. We need this female resistance leader that's pro-democracy. Their election was fake. Dude, our election was fake. You think our elections are real? They said Maduro lost the 2024 election. Yeah, Biden lost the 2020 election. We want to start with that?
Okay, so I do like a lot of his takes, although I think Trump has a new strategy when it comes to the Western Hemisphere. So it's not, I don't think it should just be come in there and take their shit. It's if Trump comes in there, takes a large portion of the oil, even if the Venezuelans only get 20 to 30% of the oil, a lot of these sanctions are going to be released. There should be a financial revitalization of Venezuela. That is important. And it's very important to Trump and the Trump administration that there is success on the ground in Venezuela, because they're going to be able to point to that when they're trying to align other South American countries on their side, like Colombia. The Colombian election's coming up in about 2 months on March 8th. The Brazilian election's coming up shortly after that on October 18th, I believe. And then you have Cuba kind of sitting there. Cuba's in a really hard situation now that the Venezuelan oil is not flowing freely. They have Mexico kind of stepping in to send oil over there to kind of have a stopgap, so at least they still have energy. The problem is Trump is going to put an end to that Mexican oil very soon, I think. So it's going to put a lot of pressure on Cuba as well. And as far as Marco Rubio, he's running a lot of these operations, and his main goal and a personal aspect is definitely Cuba. But the next country I'm going to be looking to fall in these dominoes is actually Colombia, and it's probably going to be done through an election.
And interestingly enough, both, in my opinion, the left and the right are acting as retards after this happened. Firstly, because the left is, of course, going to be that way. And now they want to liberate dictator Maduro because it was their socialist wet dream that it would actually work. And they thought it was working. And we are seeing, and we will play a few clips, people coming up to these protesters in places like New York, in places like Miami, saying, hey, I'm Venezuelan. None of you are Venezuelan and have any idea of what you're talking about. Millions of people disappeared, killed. Journalists, and of course, freedom of speech is not functional there anymore. Paramilitaries, guerrillas, everything that could go wrong in a socialist dictatorship or communist dictatorship did go wrong there. And it is another great example of how it goes wrong. But then we have the right with their extreme non-interventionism, not understanding that, yes, you can build a beautiful house, but if it's in a ghetto location covered in bullets every day and you can't protect your children or yourself, well, then you do have to go in and do something about it. In my opinion, zero interventionism in the world in general, but especially now with the multipolar world that's forming, is even less likely to be effective for the U.S. The U.S. does have to do some sort of mitigation so things don't continue to happen to the U.S.
I disagree with you.
But you do need the countries that are right beneath you and that you could be working in conjunction with to also do better. That's why we always say, for example, Mexico first is a good idea because it also benefits the U.S. Venezuela was one of those things that was like a sticking point for the U.S.
Well, I think you have to be very clear when you start talking like that. You do sound like a neocon right now. And
I'm not saying go in and do something.
The more I was thinking about it, the more I was trying
to... It's not a war, as a lot of people are trying to paint it.
And this is the point. This is really the point of how Trump is using the military. This was a short shift. This wasn't even 8 hours this operation took. It was in, it was out. They took the leader. They got what they wanted to accomplish. There were a litany of things that are kind of being moved around on the chessboard right now. Everything from China to Canada to oil, to gold, to silver, to precious metals such as rare earths and stuff like this. I mean, this really rearranged the entire global chessboard, and he did it without a forever war. And this is my thing. I'm a populist. I'm anti-war, but I do understand strategic strikes. Much like when the Iran situation came up, I said, if this turns into a forever war, Trump no longer has my support. And I kind of think I was primed for this situation because of the Iran situation. As long as this doesn't turn into a forever war, I'm going to stick with Trump. But if it does turn into major boots on the ground and they're building military bases in the country and they're constantly getting attacked, well, he's not going to get my support. And he's not going to get a lot of other conservative support. That being said, a lot of conservative commentators are so jaded because they're so anti-war. They're framing this as a long-term conflict or a long-term war that's already happening, and it's not. It's already said and done. Now, the question is, how do they arrange these pieces over the next 3 months? I think it was smart to kind of keep in a lot of the administration and have the Venezuelans do the heavy lifting with their own military, so you don't have to bring a U.S. presence on the ground.
And also you want them in the position they're at now, which is what Chavez kind of masterminded, but also by putting Maduro in there, who was essentially just there as a figurehead. Everybody else, it's like a mafia. Everybody else has something on the other. So you kind of have them all by, they're each, that Superman meme of like, not Superman, Spider-Man meme of they're all pointing a gun at each other because they don't trust each other. And I think that's a good position for the U.S. to have, and still having Delcy Rodriguez there as the number one, but also telling her, if you mess up, then goodbye to you and it's the next one, and so on and so forth. So it could be like going down the line, trying to end them all, or have them so compromised as the mafia that they are, that they won't really do anything terrible. Right now, we are seeing paramilitary groups coming into Venezuela and also starting to arrest journalists.
Well, we just kind of see Nick Fuentes talk about some talking points there, and the conservatives in general, although I don't agree with a lot of their takes, I don't like how they're completely against this and framing it as it's some kind of long-term war. That's not what it is right now. If it turns into that, I won't support it. But that rhetoric is helpful in a way because it does keep Trump in check from putting boots on the ground, from going into a long-term war, either in Venezuela or another region. His base has been very, very vocal here, so he's very aware they'll turn against him in the midterms and in the 2028 elections if he does put long-term boots on the ground. Also, Tucker Carlson, I don't like his take. We're going to get into that. We put him on the cover. I think the next two stories are his. That being said, his rhetoric is actually helpful too, even though I think it's completely off base. His basic concept is they should have left Maduro in power because he's a conservative, he's a socially conservative individual. But he's calling out the woman that won the Nobel Peace Prize,
Maria Corina Machado,
saying that she's basically a globalist, and that is bringing up the context of ideology and who the next Venezuelan leader is. And I really hope it isn't the girl that won the Nobel Peace Prize, and I do hope it is a conservative, so we'll have to see.
Or that in the next 3 months, 4 months, they do progress towards another election and see what happens then once the foothold of Maduro isn't there anymore. But let's see what Tucker actually said, because in my opinion, he is insane, totally lost it, and totally compromised by probably Qatar and other countries. But Laura Loomer says Tucker Carlson is a national security threat. Anyone running for president in 2028 should really stop associating with Tucker if they want to be president. Can we all agree on that? I wonder what President Trump would think about this.
And I don't necessarily agree that. I took this X just to get kind of the clip, but I still like a lot of what Tucker says. But when it comes to the Middle East, when it comes to Muslims, when it comes to some of his takes, he's just way off base. And I think everybody isn't going to take everything he says at face value, and you're going to really listen.
And Laura Loomer is also kind of...
Yeah, Laura Loomer's out there as well.
So the question is why? Why are we doing this? Why are we so opposed to Nicolas Maduro? So if you ask someone on the street, random person, why are we against Nicolas Maduro? The answer you're going to get is, who's Nicolas Maduro? But if you find someone in South Florida, for example, who knows who Nicolas Maduro is, who can identify where Venezuela is on a map, that person will almost certainly say, well, because he's a communist or a socialist, he's exceedingly left-wing. And that is true. Nicolas Maduro and his government are very left-wing on economics, not on social policy, by the way, which is kind of interesting. In Venezuela, gay marriage is banned, abortion is banned, sex changes for transgenderism are banned. It's one of the very few countries in the entire hemisphere with those policies. It is on social policy, not defending the regime, just saying, one of the most conservative countries in North or South or Central America. Only El Salvador really comes close, which is much smaller, of course. And by the way, the U.S.-backed opposition leader who would take Maduro's place if he were taken out is, of course, pretty eager to get gay marriage in Venezuela. So to those of you who thought this whole project was globo homo, not crazy, actually.
Okay, and that being said,
He's
yeah,
crazy.
just because a country is conservative doesn't
But
mean
it's not even
necessary-
conservative in that sense. It's a dictatorship. It's a regime. Of course, they're not going to allow for those things. But go on.
Just because a country is conservative doesn't necessarily mean it's good. Now, I generally want it conservative, and the new leader, I think that may get in there, is going to be global homo. So I'm glad this conversation is being brought up. So hopefully they can elect a good conservative leader, not a bad one like Maduro. There's plenty of conservative, corrupt politicians, and that's kind of what the populist movement in the United States is about: is rooting out that corruption, rooting out the rhinos, and hopefully they do something similar in Venezuela, where they can get a leader with good moral foundation who is a conservative, but also has good economic policies. I mean, the sanctions are getting lifted now, so the future for that country could be rather bright.
But I mean, just pointing to, oh, they don't allow gay marriage. Well, yeah, of course they don't allow gay marriage. They're following Che Guevara's, playbook on how to do things, because he also did similar things and terrible things in Cuba. So the fact that, yeah, they don't like gay marriage doesn't mean that they're conservative. They're expanding government. Literally, the whole definition of political conservatism is they're doing the exact opposite. Yes, economically, they're socialist, communist, but also in every single other policy as well. They completely nationalized almost everything, and that made it go down by the wayside. And people live in eternal poverty, and also everything else they did against people's own lives and liberties and freedom of expression too. So no, he is not even an inch conservative. And the fact that he's trying to shape it that way, he's not though. He has some things that could be pointed to as maybe socially conservative, but that doesn't mean that he's actually what a conservative leader would look like, because a conservative leader doesn't expand every single institution or nationalize it either.
Yeah, he just said economically he's not, but culturally and socially he is, and I do agree.
For what we nowadays consider to be conservative, but then again, these are all policies that were also all the way back when Che Guevara was trying to was doing all the things he did.
Just because he's a bad leader doesn't mean he's not going to have conservative policies. He had both left and right.
But in my opinion, being against gay marriage and saying that that's what makes him conservative is not.
That is conservative.
I know in today's framework in the U.S. and in Canada and in the West, yes, that means that
you're not going to just pin him. You're not going to just pin him as a leftist leader.
But before, yes, you are. But before, because the left has just recently been trying to get all those policies enacted and pro-gay marriage. Let's remember, Obama was against it, Hillary was against it, everything. So he's just following in those footsteps. It still means he's on the left.
Okay.
He's just 30 years in the left.
Okay, well, we'll disagree on that.
But he's not conservative.
I think he's both conservative and liberal in bad context, and he's a bad leader because he's just trying to fit the policy. He's just trying to fit the policies in order to maintain power. And ever since Chavez kind of left, Chavez actually built a framework where money was coming into the country. The economy has slowly crumbled under Maduro more and more each year. He's taken out more.
But also after the first few years of Chavez, it looked really good for like the first 3-4 years, and then it did start crumbling when he continued nationalizing it and making every institution be controlled by government.
Well, he was getting rid of institutions and putting loyalists next to him because he wanted to just maintain power, and that collapsed the economy. But there were major sanctions. Everybody has to remember there's major sanctions on Venezuela from Biden, from Trump, and even before the first Trump administration. Now that the sanctions are going to be lifted, you should really see an economic revival of Venezuela.
Yeah,
and I think the next clip that we had was actually the same clip I put in there by accident.
Okay. So
it was another Tucker clip.
Okay, now we're moving kind of away a little bit from Tucker and Venezuela, but we're coming back, don't worry.
The entire episode's going to end up having a through line of Maduro, but once in a while we're going to move away. Do you want to read any comments that we had about him right now?
Sure, let's read since we're in this section now. Hold on. There we go. Non says, my knee-jerk reaction to everything bad is Israel did it. Netanyahu is overjoyed about what we are doing. Ben Shapiro is stoked as well.
Okay, now, and I will say this. If, what's the lady that just won the Nobel Peace Prize, her name
Maria
again?
Corina Machado.
If she gets in, it's going to be very easy to connect the dots, as this is an Israeli operation, because there are a lot of dots that connect. That being said, if she doesn't get in, it's going to be a lot harder to connect those dots. Trump did come out with a statement saying he doesn't believe she's popular and he doesn't necessarily want her in. We're going to get to that clip when we get to the U.S. section. But I think Trump's smart enough to know his base may turn against him somewhat if they put her in as a puppet government. That's why I think they put the former vice president in as the temporary person. And if the Nobel Peace Prize winner wants to get in there, she's going to have to do it through an election. Mm-hmm. That being said, I don't think necessarily Trump wants that, because that is like putting a globalist in power there. So after the actual first elections come and they get their new leader, if it's somebody other than her, I'm going to be less likely to say this was an Israeli operation. If she does get in, it's going to be easy to connect those dots, not just for me, but for a lot of people, including the viewers.
Sure. Rafa says, Mexican journalist Aristegui interviewed a former CIA operative, and he had really interesting takes on what's going on. I don't love Aristegui. I'll check it out. But yeah, I mean, here in Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum and all her ilk, I mean, the entire Foro de Sao Paulo are shitting their pants. And they are really worried because, again, just recently, Claudia did try to defend Maduro, and she continues to do so after he was captured and arrested. So it is interesting what is going to be happening here with the powers that be in Mexico.
But you have to realize the main country they're targeting, as soon as this operation happened, it seemed to be Mexico. 5 people from the administration came out and talked about Claudia Sheinbaum, Mexico, and the corruption within the country, how it's completely unacceptable. I think they're trying to get a few more dominoes to fall, like Colombia, possibly Cuba, and if they can get Brazil, which I really don't think they can get, but if they do, they basically have Mexico surrounded, especially because the northern border is shut right now. When I say Mexico, I mean the cartels. So
the narco state.
The long-term vision here, I think they're trying to go after Mexico, but.
And I think that is what's in most people's heads, or at least to get Mexico to cooperate and be functional so they can continue with their America First promises and what they want to do.
Oh, by the way, I did watch your videos.
Rafa?
Yeah, I did watch your videos, Rafa. The second one of Dan Dix, he had a good take on one segment of it, but it's far more deep. And I don't even think that was the most important issue, the hegemony of the US dollar. Although there is a lot of illegal silver coming out there and going into the markets to stabilize the dollar. And there are a lot of other things going on. Like, I don't think Trump's trying to bring in a CBDC. He wants to bring in a stable coin to undermine other digital currencies. Stablecoin actually brings a bit more freedoms than a regular CBDC. The EU wants to bring in a CBDC, and Trump wants to undermine that currency in order to bring in a US stablecoin. I think there is so many layers to this story and so many reasons why Trump did it. To say it's just this one reason is to be kind of narrow-minded. And I see a lot of commentators saying, this is the reason, it's China, or this is the reason, it's to stabilize the US dollar.
The oil.
Or the oil.
Most people are just saying, it's the oil, it's the oil. They just want to steal the oil. What oil? China and Iran and Russia already took most of it, and the people haven't been able to.
No, that's a bad take.
But the people haven't been able to actually enjoy it. So it's not like you're taking it from the people. If the US actually goes in and does start to try to help the industry revitalize itself like it once did, because let's remember, the US was the one that initially went in and helped to build the infrastructure for them to be able to capitalize on the oil that they had. If the US can do that again, then yes, the people might probably will benefit more than they have been, because the only ones that were benefiting were the narco regime.
I think you're naive for thinking Trump's not going to take the oil. He said...
Oh, no, he's going to take it. That's what I'm saying. But at least he's going to help actually revitalize the industry that's working at below capacity right now.
It doesn't matter if he revitalizes an industry if he takes all the oil and leaves them with no oil. That being said, the way Venezuela is going to be revitalized, even if Trump takes the oil, is all the sanctions are lifted. So now they can build a real economy. And they're going to have to bring security into the country if they want to secure that oil. That security is going to have add-on effects of other industries coming into the country and building a real economy, which is going to have massive benefits because Venezuela has been sanctioned for a very, very long time. So.
And then I think this one was about... Nick Fuentes, Rafa says, so he's not only crazy, he's also evil. I think it was about Nick Fuentes because it came in when we were watching that. Non says, oh, it's pretty long, so it won't show up. Non says, wow, I really can't believe who is saying what the last couple of days. Biden actually losing is a good point. Anyhow, Dems and Republicans have had the same policy for decades. Remember Juan Guaido?
Yeah, and I mean, whether you're justifying, not justifying this, when you look at the ground with the Venezuelans, this is a good thing in their eyes, and this is their country. I mean, I don't think it could get much worse for them. Possibly it could, but I just don't see it happening. They're going to want to put some kind of security presence within the country and stabilize it and really bring in not only oil companies, but oil companies need security. So that will welcome other massive corporations to kind of come in, especially in a country that for so long didn't really have a lot of private industry.
And also from Non, and I think it won't show because it's too long. I gotta fix that part of this whole showing the messages thing. But Non says, I still respect international law and the Geneva Conventions. Any argument against that falls flat immediately. I'm pretty sure Marco Rubio will be assigned to manage Venezuela's IMF contracts.
Yeah, it's very interesting because international law is coming up a lot. Trump had 5 justifications under international law to go in there. He was very precise to point each one of those out, whether it was in the papers he released or when he was addressing it to the general public. He doesn't want to be prosecuted after this, so he made sure he had plenty of justification. International law is actually in contradiction with itself, and they really need to work out international law in that context. That being said, I definitely see how people could frame it as he's violating international law. That being said, under international law, he actually has 5 justifications for going into the country. Also, that being said, it's coming down to pure power politics now. Only countries that actually have a military are getting a say in the world. This would be Russia, China, and the United States. The EU no longer has a real military. Even their military weapons, they have to buy off other countries because they can't manufacture them themselves. Only Russia, China, and the United States can manufacture their own military weapons. That gives them, they are first-tier countries. Second-tier countries kind of get to pick their allies, meaning a country like Saudi Arabia or India can pick who they want to be friends with. And then you have third-tier countries that if you're in that hemisphere, that region of influence, you're basically going to be forced to cooperate with that country.
But also to all the people saying, oh, international law was broken, international law, that's what the first thing Claudia Sheinbaum came up to say is, well, yeah, maybe if you do think, or if Trump hadn't justified it as he has with the 5 points, etc., if you go on and say, oh, they broke international law, well, what's going to happen to the U.S.? And also, and you brought this point up, if you're complaining that a country broke international law, but then it broke it against a country that's also not respected international law for who knows how long, for decades
Hold
now.
on. The argument
and you can't, well, the other thing I was going to say, they can't lose the United States, who is the enforcement arm of international law for at least this hemisphere in the Western hemisphere. If they do go against or try to go against the U.S. and Trump, consequently, then they would be losing the only enforcement arm they have left, and it would go like the international law enforcement arm would now become either China or Russia, probably China. So I don't think they're willing to stomp their little feet and say international law, but they're not willing to go through with the consequences of what would happen if they actually try to do something about this international law being broken.
Okay, maybe I'll try to explain it a little bit more concisely. And that is, the Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro wanted to appeal to... Do you want to go?
No, as a dictator.
Nicolas Maduro wants to appeal to international law for protections, but he doesn't want to actually follow international law. And if a country's going to do that, international law shouldn't be respected towards them. Now, if a country does want to adhere to international law, other countries should respect them on the basis of international law. But he was a dictator, and there was plenty of reasons that he violated international law. So I don't see it being a problem to violate international law against him. That being said, almost every country in the world violates international law, including the United States, China. China just violated it last week by surrounding Taiwan in the water and in their airspace. So the fact that they're saying the United States violated international law today, they just violated it 5 days ago. So the only, it's coming down to pure power politics and who has the enforcement arm to actually enforce their politics.
And it is the U.S. right now.
Well, it's the U.S., China, and Russia.
Nan says Trump already mentioned Colombia and Mexico as possible targets. I mean, it's a domino game. Like he's
but
throwing down dominoes.
He's not going into Colombia the way he went into Venezuela. There'd be too much pushback internationally. He can get away with Venezuela because Maduro was a dictator. The thing is with Colombia, the election's only 2 months away. I don't care if it costs Trump $1 billion. He's going to invest $1 billion through different means in order to get that election to go right and have somebody that's going to cooperate with him. Cuba, there's a ton of pressure on him right now because a lot of their resources were coming from Venezuela. So they might try a color revolution there. After they have those three pieces in place, they're definitely coming for Mexico.
Also, because Mexico is supporting and helping and sending over oil tankers to Cuba, and also was doing certain things to help Venezuela as well. So it's not like they're completely innocent in the Foro de Sao Paulo.
You have to realize Mexico is nothing but a middleman when it comes to cartels and a lot of other things. So if they cut off the root base of where a lot of this product and a lot of these other things are kind of coming from, whether it's guns, drugs, or otherwise, it's very hard for the Mexican cartels to run a profitable organization at that point.
Non says, again, it doesn't show up because it's too long. I got to figure out how to do that. Non says, Tucker nails it again. I think he's a CIA limited hangout, though, but I didn't care. But I don't care. Anyone saying what I want to hear is an ally right now. We'll see how it all pans out.
I think Tucker's absolutely wrong. I'm glad Maduro's gone. That being said, I like the fact that Tucker is bringing up the fact that we don't want a globalist in power in Venezuela or any other country. So the fact that he's bringing up that conversation long before they're having elections in Venezuela, that's going to have time to ferment and kind of get around the internet. And with the internet and free speech coming back into Venezuela, at least I hope so, it may have an effect on the next election.
The Cartel de los Soles, which is still active, and Diosdado Cabello, whatever his name is.
It's an English show.
Diosdado Cabello, fine. Also said that they are monitoring still all the internet communications coming in and out of the country and within the country as well. So, I mean, there's still no free speech. We also did see at least some journalists being taken somewhere by their paramilitary. So, I mean, it's still a few days in, and of course, they're going to still try to do that. So I'm saying eventually, hopefully, the internet and they can reach actual information. But for now, it does seem that the cartel is still, the dictatorship cartel is still has their hooks into information. Non said the new show format looks great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We did work on it all December, so.
Yeah, and then we had to make corrections after the last episode, and
now we have more.
Hopefully everything's working. She's got a little stream deck there. I programmed the buttons in, so hopefully the chapters come up a lot more smoothly today.
Yeah. Non also says also agree socially conservative at least. For Maduro, again,
and the big reason you're going to want a conservative or somebody that has a non-moving moral foundation and upholds religion is just for that reason. You don't want somebody getting into government and then sitting moral foundations and constantly moving them, especially in a more impoverished country like that. A strong non-moving moral foundation is important for that reason.
Rafa says the political compass is so limited.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to describe what Maduro would actually encompass. But again, I still think it's classic communism and socialism and from 30 decades ago. But still, that's what they believed, and it's just continued to be that way. It doesn't mean that they're actually conservative.
Well, politics is
traditional, maybe, if you want to use that word, but I would never use the word conservative to describe Nicolás Maduro.
Yeah, and outside of Maduro, just the global scale of politics has changed with Venezuela. It's now pure power politics. The international order is kind of, people are seeing it for what it is. Every country violates it. No country really upholds it. When one country wants to accuse another country of violating the international order, that only sticks if it's the more powerful country saying it to the weaker country. So people are seeing politics for what it is. What is your enforcement arm and how much power do you actually have?
Rafa says, if Netanyahu is happy, that's totally a bad sign. Again, why do we have to bring everything back to Israel? I don't mind that at all, especially in the context of Venezuela. But right now, Netanyahu and Israel are a little bit preoccupied with the 7 wars or however many they've decided to wage now. I think this in a way, yeah, tangentially it affects. Iran was completely in there. I mean, they were already training Hezbollah camps. They had Hezbollah camps, but still.
The girl that won the Nobel Peace Prize keeps talking about how she's going to go over to Israel, how she's going to make an embassy in Israel. Like, the ties she's trying to build with Israel is absolutely insane. They don't help her when it comes to basic social media or the world kind of looking at Venezuela or her in particularly. If she wants to have relations with Israel, she might want to do that a little bit more privately. Yes. I think she's going to get a lot of backlash, and I think that could actually cost her the election overall.
And Rafa also says the guy from the CIA also mentioned the petrodollar protection as the real objective.
There's a lot of things not only going on with the petrodollar, but going on with the unit, which is the new form of currency coming out of China. A lot of the silver and gold actually comes out of Venezuela and is smuggled through a lot of different South American sources through Venezuela that illegally and secretly goes out on a lot of oil tankers. And a lot of the newer currencies, especially the unit, is trying to secure itself and back itself with gold, meaning every digital currency has a piece of gold attached to it, and you can exchange one for the other at any time. China is starting to get a stranglehold on both gold and silver, so this really upsets the kind of new digital order and digital currencies being backed by gold and silver. So there are a lot of add-on effects, not just the petrodollar, not just the US dollar. I mean, there's just so many sides to the story, and it was very easy for Trump to completely shake up the chessboard. Now it's time to rearrange the pieces, I guess. And he was able to do it without a forever war, which I appreciate.
As of now.
Yeah. That's why I'm watching the next 3 months so closely.
Nan says, sorry, I'm a chatterbox. No, and we like, that's why we say we read every comment, because we do. And that's the whole point of doing a live show. Otherwise, we would just pre-record and just release it at
it's all really, I want a lot of audience interaction, and that's why we took a lot of time so we can bring comments up on stream. It took us like 3 or 4 days to figure it out. I'm glad it actually worked.
Kind of.
So yeah, please leave comments if you're watching.
Rafa says, rules and laws only work out when the strongest are willing to respect them. I would say when the strongest are willing to enforce them, not so much respect them.
Yeah. It's hard to say. I mean, you have somebody like Maduro that didn't respect international law, yet he wants to appeal to international law. So do you let him kill, torture people, and do whatever he wants, and then appeal to international law saying we have sovereignty, you can't come in here, you can't do anything? It's basically like I'm pointing my finger in her face and said, I didn't touch you, I didn't touch you. Well, he effed around and he found out is what kind of happened.
But also, I mean, what they were doing in Venezuela was affecting the U.S. and was affecting the entire, American continent.
Well, I was talking to some actually liberal friends today, and I was surprised at their reaction because they were talking about international law, stuff like this, and how there used to be an hegemony. And I said, it's a new world. There's only 3 countries that really have power. That's China, Russia, and the United States, because they can manufacture their own military weapons and they actually have an army to enforce their enforcement arm. So I think you're going to need 3 different international orders for the major power players. And if they have any overlaps that they agree on, then that will become the umbrella laws, but there's going to be a lot less of them. I mean, the Middle East isn't going to respect LGBTQ values and the rest of it. But if they're under a hegemon like China that doesn't necessarily want that to be part of their international value system, it works a little bit better. So having 3 different versions of international law, and then if they agree on a few things, that can be the overarching principles, I guess.
Sorry, I'm trying to fix something.
Yeah.
And Rafa says, oh, it won't let me do it. Hold on. Rafa says, why victis? So, why victis? It's Latin.
Oh, well, you're acting like I speak Latin here.
I took Latin for a year in college. I failed it miserably. I got 5% out of 100. Winning. Rafa says, supongo que ahora tendremos que mantener a Cuba. He's meaning Mexico will now have to pay for everything for Cuba, which we already do. Again, we're sending oil tankers. Our president decided that it was a good idea to make a whole new petroleum company to say secretly send oil tankers to Cuba and financial support.
Yeah, this
in
is
exchange for doctors that don't really do anything.
It's going to be very interesting what kind of happens here. People are disregarding when Trump says this is about the cartels and the drugs. It has actually a lot to do with that, but not just the cartels and drugs. What he wants to change is the dynamic in a lot of these Latin American countries, because now he's dealing with his sphere of influence, which is the Western Hemisphere. I think he wants to get rid of the cartels so he can deal directly with the governments. Right now, there's shared power blocks in all these countries that makes it very hard to do business in a lot of these countries. Also, if America becomes a manufacturing hub again, he's going to want to bring the economy of a lot of Latin American countries up so they can buy the products.
Yes. I'm sorry, I'm trying to fix something. Rafa says, God-given hair. Ha, ha, ha. Hair as in hair. And also says, I love the on-screen comments. Thank you. I'm trying to fix the RUMBLE ones because we do have some there, but for some reason it's not working.
That's the first day of bringing up on-screen comments. Why don't you just read the comments from Rumble? We won't bring them up on the screen, though.
I will.
But in the future, we should be able to bring them up.
Yes, I'm trying to figure it out. Ethel, hello, Ethel.
Oh, good to see you, Ethel.
Oh, your display message is on screen now. Good stuff. I will post something smart later on. I'm trying to get RUMBLE to work, so hopefully by then. Ethel says, the degree of violation, though, Guy.
Yeah.
Of the violation of
But
international
what you have to realize, if you can tell me one other country that hasn't violated international law, I can only think of one at this time, and nobody's going to agree with me on that one, and that is Russia. Russia's run by a lawyer, so he always justifies everything by the international order, and he always quotes what Europe has done and what the United States has done and how they have set international law. So for all of his precedents for going into Ukraine, he actually recited international law and how the United States actually set that law, as well as Europe going into different African countries. So I don't even know if there really is an international law. If it is, it's not well defined. A lot of its basic principles are in mass contradiction. Trump justified his going into Venezuela by 5 major principles within international law, and then he violated 2 principles of international law. So...
Okay, I can't do it. Ethel says, I don't care about Venezuela, to be honest. When will our Canadian friends become the great big 51st state?
Oh, okay, we're going to get into Canadian politics later. Maybe I'll cover it a little bit now. This had massive impact on Canada. It looks like there's going to be an election called early next year. Carney knows that. He's been looking to run on an issue. He doesn't have any issues. He's failed the entire time he's been in office. He hasn't got a deal. Prices has gone up. The economy has gone up. Trump says there's not even going to be a deal in the future. I mean, he has nothing to run on. Now that this Venezuelan thing has happened, his administration is leaking out, oh, Venezuela was first. They went in there for the natural resources. Canada's going to be next. That's an absolute ridiculous concept. If he runs on that and actually wins, Trump is going to get Canada, because 30% of Canada right now is talking about separating from Canada. If Carney wins a majority government or another election, you're going to see at least one of those provinces leave Canada, and then Canada's going to separate like dominoes. That being said, if Carney actually loses the next election and Pierre Poilievre comes in, it's possible that Canada actually stays whole and no province actually separates. I still think they should separate. They've been, especially Alberta, they've been treated like the doormat for far too long. But of all the countries, a lot of people wouldn't think this would affect Canada, and it has affected Canada immensely, the invasion of Venezuela. Also, there's 3 places America gets crude oil or really heavy oil. It's primarily Canada and Venezuela. Canada didn't get a deal for their oil with Trump, and now that Trump has that Venezuela oil, it's going to be very hard for them to get a deal.
And Rafa says, YouTube censored comment, we should ask Tucker what's worse, dying of hunger or from the gay? Exactly. And Ethel says, welcome to the freer platform.
Okay.
F CommieTube.
And let's go into a few articles, and then we'll get back to the comments.
And to me trying to fix the comments, which I can't make them pop up for RUMBLE, but whatever. But now to the bane of Rafa's existence, we are going to talk a little bit about Candace and the insanity.
And just 2 stories here, so it's going to be fairly quick.
Yes, so Brent says, I'm begging, make it stop. Ian Carroll just duct taped Charlie Kirk's murder to every conspiracy he's ever bookmarked. Brigitte, Macron, Candace, 9/11, Pizzagate, Epstein, Israel, Illuminati.
And I actually agree with some of these conspiracy theories. The problem is this Candace conspiracy theory is just absolutely falling apart. Not only me used to be on her side, but Valhalla and a lot of other people that were kind of going down rabbit holes with her and speaking up for her have realized there's nothing there. And if there is something there, she hasn't presented it yet.
There's no there.
And then there was like the World Economic Forum. The Illuminati is always kind of there. The aliens, the lizard people, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, you know, the Bilderberg Group.
Are you retarded?
Epstein's employers, they weren't just the government of Israel. At the like 9/11 layer, like the, you know, like the cold case files layer, or are you at the Illuminati layer, or are you at the like portals to other dimensions layer? There is a spiritual component going on, but who knows? Pizzagate was a big part of it. Epstein was a big part of it. 9/11 was a big part of it when you really think hard. The Brigitte Macron story might be the clearest window into it.
The fact that it's speculated that she's a man? No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
With the Brigitte Macron.
I don't know. I want to see what he says about Brigitte Macron.
And I actually do think Brigitte Macron is most likely a man, and that she was definitely a PDF file, especially when you look at her relationship with Macron. I'm just not sympathetic to this conspiracy theory they're trying to put together with TPUSA anymore. And I'm somebody that was completely on board. I watched Candace today, ready to be convinced. She presented no evidence, presented how the world's attacking her, and had different comedians kind of speak for her because I think she's scared of getting a lawsuit against her now.
Different comedians that ended up going to Qatar and getting paid a lot of money, like Seth Dillon.
Someone's story, the Charlie Kirk story, kind of this trifecta that has all these little subtle spider webs out into these other networks and these other stories. It's kind of cracking open this gateway into the shadow government behind everything.
And I actually believe there is a shadow government and things like that, but to try to connect all those conspiracy theories to this one, they're losing their opinions to reality here. When they first started going down these rabbit holes, they tried to stay away from conspiracy theory land, and now they're just fully in it. And I think a lot of the general public is no longer with it. Even a lot of her supporters, which I was one of them, unless she shows me something, I'm not on that side anymore.
I've been against this almost since day one. Since you were still doing your solo show, every time you talked about it, I kept saying, this is dumb, this is dumb, this is because of jealousy, or whatever other reason.
As well.
Yeah, Rafa has also been on the right side. Thank you, Rafa. But someone else that is coming out forcefully against Candace Owens more and more is Alex Jones.
And I thought this clip was just a lot more humorous, and I think it really kind of highlights the craziness they're going down. Yeah. We can just play the clip here.
Okay, it's from Cinema Shogun. Alex Jones trolls Candace Owens fans.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now being reported by the mainstream corporate media that Erica Kirk is pregnant and that she's been hiding this fact. And the word is, according to a source I had, that was in North Dakota at a military base. He just walked in the secure skiff. There was 15 colonels and all the people at TPUSA. They're having a big meeting about how Candace Owens is really a man. And that's why there's such a fight between him and Erica Kirk, is because 5 months ago, before Charlie got killed, Candace, also known as Big Mike Jr., got Erica Kirk pregnant. And Charlie found out about it. And that's why the two of them got together and conspired at the fort in North Dakota and also Fort Huachuca to assassinate Charlie to cover this up. But now the two are in a major fight with each other. And again, if you question me, you're trying to cover up the fact that obviously Charlie was killed and there was accessories. You're hiding the investigation. You cannot question this. My source is named Mitch Bumbleberry, and you just can't question him. But we're going to put a give and go for him. You're raising $200,000 just right now. So I'll put the article up from mainstream media saying she's pregnant. So off that piece of information, you must connect the dots now and say that Candace Owens is a man, Big Mike Jr., Anacondas for arms, one in the pants, and had a secret relationship with Erica Kirk, and that it is Charles Owens, that's his real name, Charles P. Owens, Charles Peabody Owens.
You can leave it there. And it's just kind of funny because he connects one thing to another thing to another thing. And that's what kind of happened here. They kept having to move the goalposts because information kept falling apart. So they just kept going more rabbit holes. And then when you look back on the whole narrative, you're like, holy shit, what did they just try to sell me on? And it's actually bringing us away from the people that actually probably did this. And if there is a conspiracy, the people that may have helped that individual do it. I mean, a lot of the messages he put out made it look like he did this by himself. And I think he may have done that intentionally to try to keep the investigation off other people and create deniability for the people that would have helped him. Like his furry lover there. Okay.
Yes, we're moving on to religion in a bit, but I'll just finish reading the comments about the Candace insanity. Because again, it's mostly Maduro wall-to-wall coverage and everybody's opinions and etc. I do think we should all be listening more to people from Venezuela, and both the people that are, most people, almost all the people and commentary I've heard is that they're glad that this happened. Some of them are doing the caveat of, well, but it's Trump and that's not good, but still we're free now. But then also listen to the people that are still living in Venezuela and are saying that the paramilitary and they're still under the regime's control in a way, and it's not going to be from day to night that it's going to completely change.
Like, I mean, who's saying this is international law? Primarily the EU. They're the ones that appeal to international law because the UN is so strong there. The problem is, under international law, NATO had agreed not to move 1 inch further east, and they did that year after year after year after year. And then now they're in a war, and they want to say, well, we're not the ones that started the war. Russia's violating international law. I'm sorry, but you've been violating international law for over 10 years.
Okay. And now Rafa says, I guess you didn't get the bad God-given hair joke. Now I did. Because the head of the military forces and security and etc. of Venezuela is called Diosdado Cabello, which means God-given hair. That's literally his name. But now I did get it. Now I did fully understand. My brain synced. Non says, I agree with you, Guy, about Russia. What did you say about Russia?
I said, well, there's a few points I made, but one big point was under international law, they had agreed not to move 1 inch further east. I don't know if she was referring to that comment because I brought up Russia a few times. Okay, I can't remember.
Don't know if it's a she.
Okay.
Neo says, I've noticed a pattern, Milo, Candace, it's none, I think. I've noticed a pattern, Milo, Candace, Ian Carroll, and Ryan Mata often start and stop posting about the same topics at the same time. It seems coordinated. Well, of course.
Well, it seems like both sides are coordinated at this point. The TPUSA definitely has people in their camp. They're putting out a narrative, and Candace definitely has people putting out a narrative. And it's very odd to not see other takes. Either they're selling this narrative or they're selling that narrative. I have seen a couple content creators kind of cross over. I happen to be one of those people. Valhalla was another one. He was actually somebody I thought was well-grounded and actually digging into certain rabbit holes on Candace's side. That's no longer there. Candace actually went directly after him on today's show.
And Neo says, Candace said she's returning to her Macron series. So going back to what was working. So apparently she said that.
Well, she said tomorrow she's going in. She's got plenty of information about TPUSA and a bunch of other things. Just not on today's episode. She felt like she had to defend herself on today's episode because she hasn't had a show in 2 weeks. And she did do an X Spaces for 2 hours, which she looked absolutely insane on. Mm-hmm. We played clips from that. That just sold me even more that I don't think she has anything.
And Non says, man, everything is so crazy. Seems like all these public figures are becoming state stenographers. In a way, but at the same time, they're going against, for example, the conservatives or the people on the right or the America First non-interventionists are going against what Trump is saying. While it is useful, as you say, to keep Trump kind of at a margin and then have him know that his base will not agree if he goes further in or actually starts trying to do some sort of military enforcement or action. At the same time, I think they're not fully seeing the actual dimension and the scale of it. And I guess being from Mexico and having lived in Canada, for example, I see it in a very different light than a lot of the Americans that only ever think about the U.S. and America.
Well, and I think the Trump administration wants to move back globally and they want to focus on the Western Hemisphere. I truly believe they do have some kind of bigger vision for the Western Hemisphere. And it's not just to go in and take the oil and leave them high and dry. They're going to want to build these economies and have actually strong partners. They're going to want their hemisphere to be the strongest, not just America.
Because it benefits them.
They're going to have to create a whole internalized economy within the Western Hemisphere. They're going to need to build manufacturing, probably based in the United States and probably in Mexico for lower grade manufacturing. And they need to build a client base for what they manufacture. So they're going to need to bring the economy of Central and South America up. And that's fairly easy to do because a lot of these economies aren't doing so well. And they've been neglected for years.
Non says, yes, international law, and also says, I'm a dude, a male dude. See, I told you. So stop saying
I'm so
she.
sorry.
It's NON.
I apologize.
It's just the name of the user. Ethel says, guys, I think you lost audio on Rumble. I checked in on another browser too. Could hear the ads, but not the stream. Oh no. Because I tried to connect the chat to RUMBLE.
Oh,
but
maybe
then...
take the chat off so at least the sound comes back. But we'll stick here on YouTube. And we'll go into the religion section now if we can.
Yes. Let me just try to fix that. Non, let us know if... No, not none. Ethel, let us know if the...
if it's still working on Rumble.
If it still works.
Okay.
But yeah, let's move on to religion.
Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God.
And as we said, we wanted to not just talk about Maduro because I think most people, it's going to become... tedious, and there's a lot more to talk about.
Actually,
in the next months.
most of the episode, when we get into the U.S., China, Africa, it's all Maduro, Maduro, Maduro. But as far as religion and Maha and health go, which are the next two sections, we're going to get a little bit away from it.
Yes. Hold on. No, that's not the one. From Joe Webben, quote, thought you might appreciate this one. And I guess we'll just play it.
Yeah.
Oh, is it from the Nick Fuentes interview?
Yeah, this is the same gentleman from the Nick Fuentes interview.
You can have a pit bull, but that dog is genetically bred in such a way that it is extremely dangerous, especially to children. And so you can own a pit bull. In America, I say that you can own a tiger if you want. But if you own a golden retriever and it has a really bad day and does something, tragic, the golden retriever is put to death, and you're probably going to have to go to court and those kinds of things. But I don't think you get locked in jail. But you have a pit bull that has that reputation. And the pit bull kills, 2 little 5-year-old girls. The pit bull gets put down, and so do you. That would be my position. So I say all that to say, one, there are degrees, but two, also just the system itself, it's less of a policing. So there's actually a lot of freedom. Like people are like, well, I don't want the government, to tell me what to do in my bedroom. Well, the government currently tells you how to build your bedroom, right? That you can have a pit bull.
Okay, and this was interesting. If you watch this interview, he's a Christian nationalist, but what he was ultimately talking about was punitive justice and taking responsibility for your own actions. If something goes wrong, that there's going to be pretty severe punishments, but they don't want to run a society where they're telling you every little thing on how to do, what to do, this and that. So more of an idea of punitive justice, which I actually found pretty fascinating. I think there's a good compromise to have between kind of both kind of legal systems there. But I think a punitive justice, more religious system can work to take out a lot of the different, well, you need a license for every single little thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sorry. Apparently we still don't have audio on RUMBLE. I was trying to fix it.
Oh, that's fine.
Sorry. Moving on. From Predictive History, quote, a summary of Protestant, Catholic, and Orthodox Christianity.
And yeah, I kind of brought this up. He gives an explanation of all the major 3 types of kind of Christianity, Orthodoxy, and Catholicism here. That being said, there's a war going on inside of Christianity, and I think each one of these appeals to a different type. Different identity groups are trying to put on different skin suits of different forms of Christianity. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Summarize what the differences are between the Protestant, Catholic, and Orthodox religions, okay? And again, these are different branches of Christianity, and they seem similar, but in reality, they are extremely different, okay? So the Protestants believe that we choose to sin. We have free will. The Catholics don't believe in free will. They say we are born in sin. And the Orthodox are fatalistic. They believe we are born to sin. We cannot control our own nature, okay? That's the first major difference. Second major difference is only a few will be saved and redeemed, okay? The Protestant is a very unforgiving religion. only if you work hard and become very wealthy will you be saved. The Catholics believe that, no, everyone can be saved and redeemed. And the Orthodox believe we are beyond salvation and redemption. The human heart is so dark, so mysterious, that we are beyond salvation and redemption. And that is why God is great, because only God can save and redeem us, even though we are beyond salvation and redemption. Okay? The third major difference is the Protestants believe that our faith in God will save and redeem us. The Catholics believe obedience to God, obedience to the church is what will save and redeem us, whereas the Orthodox believe that only God can forgive us. And if God forgives us, we can't really control.
Okay, and you can kind of leave it there. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the three and the skin suits that are trying to be put on right now, at least in a lot of the West, this being America, Europe, and Australia. The LGBTQ is definitely trying to put on the skin suit of the Protestant church. They've infiltrated their ranks, really tried to install a Marxist ideology amongst a lot of the bigger churches. It's not to say they're all corrupted, but it's saying they've been infiltrated definitely by the LGBT community in a lot of their churches. We've seen this personally in Canada with rainbow flags just being put all over these churches. And I'm not talking about Christian rainbow flags. I'm talking about LGBTQ rainbow flags. When it comes to Catholicism, there's definitely a strain of globalism in there right now because of the leadership of the church. I wouldn't say Catholics themselves, but the Pope and the last few popes they've had, along with a lot of high-ranking cardinals, are really pushing this idea of globalism through the Catholic Church. And then you have Orthodoxy. I'm actually most sympathetic to Orthodoxy, but I think a lot of populist and men are drawn to Orthodoxy. Women definitely are not. They're also drawn to the Protestant church with the LGBTQ. So, and it's just to say, when you go into these churches, be careful to what they're saying. See if they're actually preaching the Bible to you, or do they have some kind of other agenda. I think a non-moving Christian foundation is absolutely important going forward, especially because what we've seen happen over the last few years. Okay.
And we are seeing more and more people talk about how at least some sort of either Christianity or religion is coming back to the West, especially through the young people. Trad West says, quote, France is coming back to Christ. Young French Catholics are restoring damaged crosses and crucifixes throughout all of France. Young French Catholic volunteers gathered in the SOS Calvary's Association are restoring damaged crosses and crucifixes throughout France. The movement has recently gained momentum with young volunteers refurbishing wooden crosses, often vandalized or deteriorated.
Yeah, and we're seeing an organic movement of Christianity come up in the West. The problem is the elites and the people running these countries are running a war on Christianity right now, whether it's intentionally immigrating mass amounts of Muslims or burning of Christian churches or taking away the nonprofit status of Christian churches.
I might have to
you can
take the music out. But there they are.
But it's good to see a grassroots movement of doing a lot of this stuff. And when these churches are burnt down, I'm hoping these communities come together and rebuild these churches rather than sell the land to the Muslims and have them build a mosque. We're seeing this happen all over Europe. A lot of the times, even when these churches aren't burned down, they're just actually selling Catholic churches to Muslim organizations and turning them into mosques, which I think is just a slap across the face to Christianity in general.
Mm-hmm. Then should we move to the next one?
Yeah.
Speaking of Islamic, since you were going there.
And I think this is the last one in our religion section, and then we'll move into health and Maha. We only got a couple stories there, and then we'll go to international geopolitics.
From All Street Apes, quotes Steve Bannon says, the only way we're going to be able to stop the Islamic takeover of America is a new crusades. I've heard this idea talked about here in Latin America as well.
You have this soft form of Christianity has kind of infected all of the West. You're going to have to need a Christianity that's going to push back and say, no, there's a red line. This is as far as you're going to go, and you're going to go no further.
I honestly think we need a moment like the Crusades to turn this thing around. You can see in Western Europe, I think you're seeing the fall of Christendom. I don't think there's any other way to look at it. And it's going to take some very determined individuals.
Okay, and yeah, I kind of want to say I'm not a Christian myself. I am very sympathetic to Christianity, even Christian nationalism. Not saying that's the way, but I'm sympathetic to a lot of the ideas. Why am I? I mean, I'm not a Christian. Why am I sympathetic to all of these ideas? And I think there's a big group of non-Christians that are sympathetic to the Christian community, and it's because we want a non-moving moral foundation. Neoliberalism has gone completely off the hinges. They keep moving the goalposts on what's acceptable behavior, what's basic morals. Next thing you know, you're living in absolute sin.
Okay, now on to comments about the religion section. No, hold on. Rafa says, what a way to misinterpret all three branches. That dude's an idiot. Do you think so?
I'm not a Christian, so I don't know a lot about it. I know a lot more about Orthodoxy. I do like Orthodoxy because they didn't go down the rabbit hole of Vatican II, and they're not following the Pope, who I believe is a globalist right now. That's why I'm most sympathetic to Orthodoxy. I also think it's a lot more hardline of Christianity. So.
Non says, I write very long research pieces on different versions of Christianity. That's interesting. I was raised as an American white Protestant, evangelical, Holy Spirit-filled Christian, rejected it at 30 plus years ago.
Yeah. And the entire reason I like Christianity, even though I'm not a Christian, is really it has the ability to provide a non-moving moral foundation that has been time-tested and true to build fairly strong societies over thousands of years. I mean, neoliberalism wants to bring in moving morals, and we've seen what happened during the jibby jab era. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. No sense of bodily autonomy. They want to take away free speech. There's a million things that they want to do that I don't see any way of justifying it. And they had stepped over all our red lines in Canada, and I said, well, how do I even defend myself? We don't have a non-moving moral foundation. So how do I speak against what they're trying to do with this society? If the majority of people are voting for this, then does the whole society have to go along with it now?
And also to connect it kind of with Venezuela as well. I mean, socialists, communists, and dictators will always want they want themselves to be the highest power and the ones that are dictating these morals and values. But we also saw that with just the liberal model in general and the globalist model in general, where there was, and there is still, an explicit move to remove those foundational, grounded, and non-moving morals and values that religion used to provide in the West, and replace it with what they say is now the moral order and the moral way of doing things, which is, again, not founded or based on anything but their own thought of themselves being superior to the underclass, to the people.
Yeah, and I will say this, I do listen to a lot of Christian nationalists, and that has the ability to go down a huge authoritarian rabbit hole as well. Yeah. So I think there has to be a more of a compromise, but that compromise has to be set on a non-moving moral foundation that puts guardrails on the government through religion. And if religion and the government are separate, but religion is putting guardrails on the government, I think that's a good thing overall.
And Nan says, gotta go, nephew has a basketball game. Great show, you guys. And thank you for being here. Nan, who also corrected and said that he's a dude.
Yeah.
Ethel says, America was founded on Protestant values. That's what I keep saying about Nick. Bringing in lots of Catholics made it gay and Zionist and introduced BDF scandals. Mass unchecked migration was wrong already back then. Prove me wrong.
Yeah, and we kind of have gone into this, and a show called Base Camp went into this in depth. A lot of the American founding fathers did not want Catholicism into the United States. Now Catholicism happens to be one of the biggest denominations. It's very interesting the amount of discrimination that actually happened against Catholics. That was the original group they did kind of discriminated against.
Yeah, that too.
So yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you at all on that point.
And apparently there is still no audio on RUMBLE, so sorry for that.
Maybe just in the stream over there?
Should I?
Yeah, if it has no sound, it's pointless.
But that's where people are still being able to free speech chat.
Yeah, but they can't hear us. So
they're hearing it on CommuTube, as Ethel said.
And they're still logged into Rumble?
And chatting through Rumble. Yeah.
Okay.
I guess it'll be that way for today. Apologies. Ethel says, if you're not Christian, guy, what are you? Let me guess, pagan?
No, I'm sympathetic to Christianity. I actually studied Islam when I was a lot younger. I had been to church when I was younger as well. I adhere to, I think, a Christian moral foundation. I'm just not necessarily a true believer. But I would say I definitely agree with. You need some kind of moral foundation to base society on, and Christianity is that best moral foundation. So I'd say I use Christian principles in my own life. I just haven't been touched by God, as a lot of people would say. But I would say I'm far more sympathetic than an atheist to Christianity in general. And I think there's a lot of people that wouldn't call themselves Christians, but live their life in Christian moral foundational principles, I guess.
Because that's how the West was built.
That's
And
how the
what
West was
brought the morals and the actual foundations and now traditions and cultures that the West still tries to exemplify, but who have completely twisted it over and try to remove what that foundation was. And I think that is the principal problem. I always say I'm not religious, but I understand and uphold the importance of the religions that actually built the West and the countries we live in.
Yeah, and it's not to say I wouldn't be a Christian one day. It's just say I'm not now. And I would say I've been to Christian church before, and I see a lot of people not even upholding the values of what Christianity actually is. And a lot of these religions and churches don't actually put anything on the people that are actually attending their mass. Just showing up is enough. You actually have to adhere by certain Christian principles in order to really be a real man, build a real society, and things like this. I mean, you can't just go to church and then cheat on your wife the next day. A lot of people think that's fine.
Yeah. Ethel says that makes you a Christian, just a more secularized one.
I guess you could say that.
Well, for me, I'm completely non-religious. And again, I don't think I'll ever be touched by God or believe in anything further. But I think I can even make a stronger point because I'm not religious for the importance of religion, because I'm able to say, even though I don't follow it, I do see how it builds societies and how all of our moral principles, foundations, laws, etc., come from that, at least in the West. So why try to remove it? Because there is something else trying to be installed, I'd say, ever since the period of the illustration. No, la ilustración, I'm thinking about it in Spanish for some reason. France.
The revolution?
No.
The French Revolution?
Before that.
I don't
The
know.
illustration, la ilustración. Somebody help me.
I don't know.
Rafa, help me. How do you say la ilustración?
That being said, I guess, yeah, you could peg people that are more secular as Protestant, but I'm very sympathetic to Orthodoxy. And if I ever did take that step, it would probably be
The
something.
Enlightenment period.
Okay, let's continue on.
Sorry. That's what I was trying to say. And Ethel says, just on this topic, Ethel says the founding fathers were right about everything. And again, I do agree for the U.S. Exactly.
And yeah, and this is the thing. The founding fathers were right about a lot. The Bible had a lot of things right. And just because you think we can do it better, by trying to do something better and really going taking away a lot of the founding principles, you don't know what happens when you take that wall down. A lot of times the wall was put there for a reason.
And we're kind of seeing it, but I think it could get even worse and people don't want to look at that either.
I think the Jibby Jab era was a wake-up call for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. They started really saying, well, there is real evil in this world. The government is actually projecting evil on a lot of their citizens by the level of authoritarianism they're kind of bringing in on the back of freedom.
And that we have replaced higher power with the government being the higher power, and that should never be.
Well, and the governments want to give all these rights, but no duties to go along with them.
That's or responsibility.
You're going to need some kind of duty or responsibility in society in order to build a strong, functional society that gets stronger every generation. I feel like the West is starting to get weaker every generation, technologically more advanced, but mentally they're losing their moral foundation.
But let's move on to health and Maha, ever since you mentioned the Jibby Jab, so let's do that.
But the greatest danger of all would be to do nothing.
And we'll just do one story in this section, I guess.
Which one do you want to do?
Just the first one's fine.
Okay. Speaking about babies, which I like. And if you don't know Erica Commissar, I don't agree with her on everything, but Camus says, Erica Commissar, on the hidden cost of sleep training babies. Having a child is much harder than we tell them you will not sleep for 5 years.
And yeah, I kind of brought up the story. I didn't actually know a lot about this. I was hoping you were going to know more than I was. And I didn't know if sleep training was a good or a bad thing. I always thought you should leave the baby cry to build some kind of independence. Otherwise, it's going to be coddled.
Well, Rafa, listen up, I guess. Let's see.
Having a child and raising a child is much harder than we tell them. You should tell parents you will not sleep for 5 years, period. And that way they won't sleep train their children and destroy their children's brain cells. I mean, I can tell you right now, it is devastating when parents come in to me and say, I sleep trained my child and my child has never been the same, emotionally, neurologically. If you saw an adult hysterically crying and desperately afraid, you never shut the door in their face. But we tell parents to do that with their babies. We tell them to put their babies in a room, to let them cry until the point of vomiting and hysteria and raise their cortisol levels past the point of them being able to ever process any of that stress. And we tell them not only that it's okay, but it's ideal. Because what we're valuing is parents' comfort over children's comfort. In the first year in particular, children's comfort has to come first, not parents' comfort. Having a child and raising a child.
Yeah, and I didn't know what to think about this. I thought this was a little bit of a liberal mindset, but what do you think about it?
And that's what I have thought every time I do see or hear Erica Commissar with a lot of the things that she says. But in another sense, with child development, I do agree. The thing is, I think both sides take it to too much of an extreme. So, for example, I do agree that within the first, for example, 3 years of a kid's, I mean, she says 5 there, but at least the first 3 years, you should be the most important thing and the most visible thing in your child's life. I don't agree with sending your child, unless you really have to daycare. If you're having kids, you should structure your life to make the lives of your kids actually optimal and optimize them better if you're able to. And if not, maybe work things out and try as hard as you can to at least have the mother be present for the first 3 years of life. Also, a lot of people don't know, for example, that during the first 3 years of life, children don't really need to interact that much with other children. They don't value that, and that actually doesn't help them in their development. The first 3 years should really be spent with the mother, the father, of course, as well, but mainly the mother and that relationship, building that relationship. So then when they detach, they're actually doing it in a healthy way, as Erica Commissar would say. But at the same time, with sleep training, I think people, once again, go to too much of an extreme. So I do think it is important for the mother to, for example, carry the baby. And that's and looking at how things used to be done like ages ago when we were still agrarian civilizations, where mothers just had their babies on them. So of course they were co-sleeping because they had them on them. So it wasn't the baby's in the bed. That is also dangerous. But also we live in the modern times, and we do have other ways of at least being able to be there when the baby does wake up. I don't think letting them cry out until they vomit is the answer, but at the same time, I don't think being hyper vigilant of your child is good for either of you.
Well, I think there's a healthy way to sleep train a baby, and that is kind of keep it active for long periods of the day. So when you're ready to go to sleep, that's not how babies work. So when you go to sleep, it will be ready to go to sleep. Well, that's how small children work. You give them energetic activities like jujitsu,
but not
or
when
soccer.
they're not when they're baby, not when they're infants, maybe.
Yeah, but not when they're
you
can give them mental stimulation through toys and stuff
they're
like
not
that.
dogs. You're thinking of it like a dog.
I don't have a kid, so I don't know. But yeah.
But again, I have seen and researched a bit more into this. Not fully. I'm not saying I'm an expert or anything. And I don't think Erica Commissar is right on everything either. But I'm more talking about the extremes that both sides are taking.
Why don't you go actually into the next story in that section? I'm going to...
Oh, I exited.
Oh, you did?
Out of it. Sorry.
Okay.
I can go to me. Hold on. There we go. And I can read comments. Ethel says... Where are we? Ethel says that Erica Commissar video looked like an AI and in essence was an AI. This is simply fear-mongering and yet another campaign against having children. I don't think it's against having children. Erica Commissar is very for children and child rearing, but I think a little bit too much on the all emotions, just thinking about emotions, the child's emotional well-being without also thinking about, I don't want to say the parents, but like the emotional well-being of everybody else as well. I think she is a bit too lefty or too feelingsy, but again, her subject matter is babies and it is child development and psychology. So in a way, I don't agree with most of the things she says.
You have to build some independence with the child.
But I will say what she did say that is very important and I think has to be highlighted to whoever wants to have a kid or is thinking of having kids or just having kids because they think that's what they have to do. Putting the parents' priorities first. And this is what I think also with IVF. It's the same thing I think of with abortion, of course, but also surrogacy, is that the child should always come first. If parents are having a child, then the child comes first. So don't rearrange your child's life, which is still in early and zero development, and you're in charge of that development over your comfort and the ways you want to do things. Sometimes it is inevitable, but I think there should be more effort put into actually being there as parents for your children, especially during the first as she says, I guess 5 years. But
yeah, but I'm also going to
she's
say,
a bit too kooky.
and it also depends on your situation. Some families are going to be extremely financially strapped where both parents are having to work. And I mean, that's not an ideal situation. In those situations, you may have to sleep train your baby. It may be the only way.
And that's what I was saying. I think both sides do exaggerate a lot, and there are circumstances where it will differ.
Okay, let's go into immigration. We got only 2 stories in this section, and then we'll get into regional geopolitics.
Okay.
The immigration policies in Europe are a disaster. You're destroying Europe. You're destroying the culture of Europe.
And what are the first 2 stories? One is Hungary.
Yeah, one's Hungary and Viktor Orban, who I always love to hear from.
We have different opinions. From Based Hungary, quote, Hungary reveals the reason migration is allowed in Europe. It's a replacement of native-born voters. This is the left's plan. And with this, I mean, it's essentially what they did in the US as well.
The migration issue is so complicated. Legally, it's very simple. To cross the border line without a permission is a crime. Full point. It's over. The problem is that migration is a concept of changing the society as such. Yeah. It's a kind of replacement of the original native-born voters with somebody else. And this is, without being involved into any conspiracy theory, this is a well-detailed plan of the left. Because, okay, my understanding of the history is probably not as sophisticated as yours, but if I understand correctly, the last 150 years of the European, including UK anyway, the European politics, it's about a competition of 2 tribes. One is...
I was just going to go into it there.
Hold on.
One is those who think that we should stay in the traditional frame and value system of Europe as it was. Nation, freedom, Christianity, that's all.
Yeah, and I think the other side is really trying to take away the sovereignty of individual nations, and that's what you're kind of seeing. There's a lot of pushback now, but no country has said you've gone too far and we're going to separate from the EU. And I think that's because they have a lot of debt and banking leverage on each individual country in the EU itself. Now, at this point, there's talk about Italy, Hungary, and one other country possibly separating from the EU. Okay. Let's go into the other story within immigration here.
From Basil the Great, quote, OMG, Sadiq Khan says London needs more immigrants. It will never be enough until every British native white person is gone. And I have seen more and more people, like, for example, the Lotus Eaters and other British commentary people talk more and more about this concept, which I think they were too shy to talk about until the past 6 months.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I think... funnily enough, Nick Point has opened the doors for other people to have civil conversations. His discourse isn't necessarily always civil, but he blew the doors off of what was actually acceptable to talk about. So people in the middle are now able to talk about much more touchy subjects openly and freely, which I actually like.
Do you think you need fewer immigrants or more immigrants in London? I've no hesitation at all in saying we need more migrants in London. Let me explain why. So I'm not equivocating. Just because it's really important to say this why. Park the social benefits to our city from migration. Park the cultural benefits to our city from migration. I'm in charge of the education budget. Even if every single Londoner who's currently not working was to be trained up to do these jobs, we still have massive number of vacancies, record numbers of vacancies in the health sector, in social care sector, in hospitality, in tech, and so forth. And so we need to have a sensible migration policy. And my point to the government is this: if you're worried about migration because it's unpopular in certain parts of the country, if you think you don't need it, and if other parts of the country either don't want it for political reasons or don't think they need it, I respect that. Devolve to cities like London, the powers have a regional shortage occupation list, so I can be in charge of deciding how many people come into London to help our economy, but also the well-reported issues about low birth rates and so forth, and the pipeline of people coming into the economy and so forth. So we need migration, sensible migration.
Okay, and the point is here, if you keep having, the point of the video was to kind of show what a lot of these illegal migrants are doing and then compared to his words. That being said, I forgot what I was going to say, so you can go ahead.
Oh, no, I don't know.
Do you have nothing to say?
Well, I mean, again, it was a video contrasting that, but we can't show it on YouTube because...
No, I'm not saying about that. Do you have comments on the video itself, what he said?
Well, but it's the same thing they continue to say, so... No.
So you're not going to say anything for the rest of the podcast?
No, it's not a podcast. It's the show. But again, I think we all know that their positions are ridiculous. They're untenable. They make no sense. And finally, the British people are waking up to that and actually speaking up against it and saying, we, the British and the white British, are the native population of Britain. So why do, for example, Australia, Canada, etc., all the other Commonwealth countries can talk and have special laws for their native populations, and yet when the British want to do that, and when the British native population wants to defend their own land and want at least some sort of recognition that they're important within their own country, then that's not allowable, and that's forbidden.
Well, he's talking about, well, there's so many jobs we still have to fill. We have to allow in more immigrants. The more immigrants you allow in, the more people you're going to have to, the more job openings you're going to have. That's not necessarily the best way to do it here. I mean, they need to figure out how to kind of rearrange the economy so you don't have to keep allowing immigrants into upping the GDP. It's about the quality of life for your citizens. That doesn't always mean you need the highest GDP, and it doesn't always have to keep growing like a pyramid scheme. And that's what it seems like modern capitalism has kind of turned into, this giant pyramid scheme that has to keep growing in order to sustain itself. Okay, let's go into...
Well, before we end, we do have a comment. It is on RUMBLE, so I can't put it up the screen, but it's funny. Ethel says, Guy, my man, you're an immigrant in Mexico. Enough is enough. How long can Mexicans tolerate this abuse? Just joking here, but prove me wrong.
Yeah, if they want to legally immigrate, legal immigration is something completely different. And legal immigration is something that needs to be discussed between the leadership of the country and the people of the country. The people of the country in a lot of these countries have spoken. They were fine with legal immigration for a long period of time, but then you flooded these countries with illegal immigrants that put stress on the system for the legal immigrants and the citizens of the country. So I think a lot of these countries are fine with legal immigration as long as it's not done in mass, especially when you combine it with massive amounts of illegal immigration. And then you start giving away mass amounts of social stimulus dollars for welfare programs and stuff like that. If you're bringing in massive amounts of immigrants that are just going to feed off of the system and have to, the only way they can live is off government support, it's not the proper way for the country to do it. The country needs its dollars for its citizens. Only citizens should be able to claim welfare benefits and things of this nature.
But at the same time, I think it is very important to recognize for every country that is having these issues, especially like in the UK, where people are just not integrating, but they're also not doing any kind of enforcement to have people integrate. And they're just saying, oh, it's fine. Build your mosques, take over our tiny little quaint towns, and we're going to be fine with it. Do your Muslim prayer chant at 5 a.m. and throughout the whole day. It is time for that conversation to be had of the importance of integration, and of certain countries will be more amenable to the country that they're immigrating to than others. And some other countries, other cultures, have a stated mission of taking over the countries that they're immigrating to and being able to say, no, we don't want that actually.
Well, and then there's been examples of them trying to take over the country, whether it's bringing in Sharia law or having massive prayers in the street that blocks traffic, blocks emergency vehicles, and the rate of violence and straight up grape gangs in the EU is just not appropriate. We're seeing certain cultures just aren't properly assimilating to the culture. There has to be some level of assimilation. You can't do that when you're having massive amounts of immigration. It has to be a certain amount. I mean, Canada was the perfect example of this. They used to have the highest functioning immigration system in the world. Their model, every other country kind of went there and studied, and then they started allowing massive amounts of immigration, which they just couldn't sustain.
Mm-hmm. Ethel says there's massive fraud with asylum seekers. Many of them are technically legal because they were approved by the authorities. And also revising all that and saying, okay, we have very specific guidelines and rules as to who is an asylum seeker, and it shouldn't be too many, and especially if they're all coming and not doing anything else in the country after they're allowed in.
First,
or going through multiple countries.
First, they weren't legal, and then there was pushback from the citizens to the politicians. Then the politicians said, "Okay, we'll just change the definition of what a legal migrant is." So a lot of these illegal migrants are now qualified as legal migrants by having a very, very, very broad refugee status and allowing any kind of refugee claim, even if it didn't fit the classic criteria of what a refugee is. I mean. They have a similar policy in Britain right now, where for every illegal migrant that they catch crossing in a boat from France, they send back to France, and then France is allowed to send two what normally would be classified as illegal immigrants through the front door of Britain, and they're going to classify them as legal immigrants, which makes it even harder to get rid of those people later on.
And Latinos Zampo, he says, guys in Mexican, que what? You're not Mexican. But funnily enough, most people in Canada didn't believe I was Mexican either.
Yeah.
Even at job interviews, when I would put I'm Mexican, blah, blah, I've been here, I have a work permit. And when I would show up for interviews, they would not so covertly ask me, are you really Mexican? Kind of like, how long have you been here? Do you have a passport? And that's also, in a way, just they're stereotyping.
You have to think there's something bigger at foot here. And I used to live in Canada, and I know thousands of immigrants that came through there because I worked with a lot of them. And there is no attempt to bring them or assimilate them into the country. They literally tell them, keep their own culture. You don't need to learn to speak the language or anything else. It's almost like they want to keep all these immigrant populations siloed so they can turn them against one another when they want, or not turn them against one another so they can get whatever political agenda they want through by combining certain voter blocks. Even if say you have Muslims or Hindus or Buddhists all in the country, but there's some level of assimilation, then it's much harder to create division within the country and have these politicians just implement whatever political will they want in. Okay.
That was it.
We can go into U.S. geopolitics right now and back to Maduro, I think, for a lot of these stories, or at least a few of them.
Yes.
Because I threw in 3 or 4 stories that weren't.
Okay. So yes, of course, the biggest story right now in the U.S. is the capture and arrest of Nicolás Maduro. So I guess we're going to start with that. From Shadow of Ezra, quote, President Trump announces the U.S. will be taking full control of Venezuela during the transitional period. And again, it's still not fully 100% clear what that means. He says the goal is a total reset in leadership and ensuring the next Venezuelan president is nothing like Nicolás Maduro. We are going to run.
Yeah, and I will say this. It was a good operation overall because it was in and out. The question is, what does he do now? If boots have to be put on the ground and permanent military bases are built there, I'm not going to like it, and a lot of his base isn't going to like it. But as of right now, this isn't a long-term forever war.
We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So we don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in, and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years. So we are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. And it has to be judicious because that's what we're all about. We want peace, liberty, and justice for the great people of Venezuela. We're going to run the country until such time.
And that's pretty good. And yeah, I just kind of wanted to put that out there and that framing. I really hope he doesn't go in on a long-term basis with military boots on the ground or permanent military bases. That being said, I wouldn't put it past him to build a permanent military base because he's not going to want to invest $1 trillion into the oil infrastructure of Venezuela. He's going to want private companies to do that. The only way a private company is going to come in there and invest in the infrastructure is if there's long-term security guarantees like a U.S. military base. I really hope he doesn't do that, but we're going to have to see what happens over the next 3 months.
And to all it does annoy me every time people are like, this is war, no war in Venezuela, both from the left and the right. I mean, clearly it is not a war. And we've also seen a little bit at least, what the Trump playbook lately has been because of what he did in Iran. It was in and out as well. And then trying to solve the issue. just like, okay, we're done now.
He's done 9 major military strikes this year, more than any other U.S. president in history. That being said, they were very strategic strikes. He didn't put massive boots on the ground, and none of these have turned into forever wars. So if he's going to project military power, this is the way I would prefer it to be, especially if he's trying to rearrange the geopolitical chessboard here with China, with Canada, with Russia. I mean, there are a lot of add-on effects to what happened in Venezuela.
Mm-hmm. And I guess, I mean, I could bring this comment up just because we're on the topic, and then we're going to move to something else in a bit and then come back. But Latino Slam says, Latino Slam says, yes, want your takes on Venezuela. Want your takes each on Venezuela, please. So what is your take?
I'm happy Maduro's gone, 100%. He didn't uphold the international law, but he wanted the protections, and he wanted to appeal to international law for his own sovereignty. Trump went in there, he effed around, he found out. That being said, Trump didn't make this a forever war, and he didn't put massive boots on the ground. But now he has to kind of secure the country and build an economy. If he has to do that by bringing in a permanent U.S. military presence, I would call that a forever war or something I don't want to see. That can turn sideways very easily. I think he's very aware of that situation, and he doesn't want to put massive boots on the ground. That's why he's trying to use the Venezuelan military that's currently in place and put a temporary leader in there until they can get an election, because I think he wants the Venezuelans to actually work this out themselves as much as possible.
And for me, I think it was, of course, great. And seeing what is happening in Mexico, the support that Morena, AMLO, our former president, and now Claudia Sheinbaum, his replacement, or essentially his servant, because she does everything he tells her to, is good. And it's good to also scare all the other quasi-dictators in Latin America, or at least in that region, and specifically from, and those are the dominoes I think Trump is at least trying to line up, the Foro de Sao Paulo, which would include Cuba, Brazil, Mexico, Colombia, who else? Nicaragua, all the crazy ones, all the crazy communist quasi-dictators or actual dictators, and Venezuela, of course. I think the dominoes are beneficial for Trump to try to at least topple, or at least manage in some sort of way. With Maduro, it was toppling, but again, most of his narco dictatorship is still in play, and he left Trump still left it in there until they can have elections, and I think that is a good idea, for there not to be a complete power vacuum. And we're seeing some of the effects negative in this past few days of them still being there. But at the same time, I think that all the people, on both sides, the ones that are saying no war in Venezuela and that are starting to support Maduro and saying let him go, are insane, which is mostly the left, and they don't understand what they're talking about, because they're seeing and they're having a cognitive dissonance with their whole ideology toppling, especially toppled by a man, and the actual things, and the Venezuelans talking about the injustices that they had to live through, the murders, the captures, the having to escape their country, the hunger, everything else that happened during this dictatorship from Chavez and then into Maduro. Their whole ideology is toppling, and they have no idea what to do. And it's great to see Venezuelans actually talk and stand up to that ideology. But then the right is also, in my opinion, being a little bit too stupid. And a lot of the takes are not fully making sense, especially if they're trying to say, oh, America first, I'm America first, no intervention at all. Well, then you're going to end up with America becoming as bad as all the countries that are under it and also above it with Canada. So something does have to be done. And right now, luckily, in this side of the hemisphere, we do have the US as the hegemonic power, not China and not Russia. If for some reason the USA loses more and more power, then of course those other two will take over. It will be a power vacuum. So to everybody that is saying no imperialism, but also the ones that are saying non-intervention, you can't have America first if you don't make the other countries under it and that affect it and that trade with it and that are dependent on it also great too.
Yeah, but you have to realize he just set a precedent. That precedent, what happens when the Democrats get in? And then they want to start installing socialist leaders. So,
but I don't know if they'll have the full justification.
Yeah,
and again,
what I'm saying is you're saying luckily we're under the American hemisphere. The American hemisphere is actually very bipolar.
Yes.
For 4 years it's Trump, then 4 years it's a Biden government that wants to move towards socialism. Who knows if it's going to be an AOC or Mondani next. It's very important. A lot of Central and South America and is starting to go right wing. It's very important. They built a strong foundation based upon non-moving moral foundation, and hopefully they can get their economy jump started and actually start trading a lot with each other and make the Western Hemisphere strong with the U.S. But even if the U.S. goes sideways, they can have an economy they can rely on with each other.
Being able to remove the
Yeah.
U.S. But right now, it's still almost, it's not enough going to the right yet in Latin America. And I do think that certain pushes have been done by the U.S., especially in Chile, for example, and Argentina as well, and El Salvador.
Well, I think Trump has a larger vision of the Western Hemisphere, and he wants to get a lot of these cartels out because he actually wants to bring up the Western Hemisphere. He wants to deal directly with governments. Right now, it's very hard because there's dual power bases in a lot of these countries, whether it's Mexico, whether it's Venezuela or Colombia. So if he can kind of really crack down on all of these cartels, and there's a lot of add-on features that are going to go with that. That's obviously not the primary reason, but we're not going to know if he can even accomplish that till more near the end of his term. But I'm willing to give him some leeway as long as he doesn't start a forever war, as long as it's strategic strikes like he did in Venezuela.
In Iran.
Oh, and in Iran, yeah. That's so Iran, because it's not in the direct hemisphere. That's more of a global
But I also think people in the US don't understand how deeply embedded China and Iran, but mainly China, has been in Latin and South, in all of Latin America, but specifically in South America, in Brazil, in Venezuela, in Mexico as well. Mexico has tried to push them out ever since they've tried to start having some sort of trade negotiations with the US. But it's still fully embedded here. And it has become very obvious that a lot of the infrastructure projects and a lot of the things that have been happening in Latin America that they're so proud of are coming from China. But also, for example, Venezuela, Iran was also right here. And again, do we want those power players on this side of the hemisphere?
Yeah, if the Colombian election does go away from the current leader they have, that election's in 2 months. Brazil's completely isolated. Brazil is one of the big crown jewels of the BRICS alliance. So it's going to be interesting if Colombia does shift to new leadership, and then the Brazilian election comes up in October, right before the midterms in the United States.
And I don't know how many people did or didn't read the national security strategy that they came up with about a month ago, very recently, where they explicitly say they want to take care more of their hemisphere and the continent of America, and not so much be involved in stuff over there. But the things that happen over here do affect every other country. And that is also why the US, and talking about the US, as much as Mexicans hate it and other people in Latin America hate to acknowledge that the US is that important, it is that important.
Yeah, but it's very important that we actually look at what happens to Venezuela over the next 3 months. Can he stabilize it over the next 6 and 12 months? Does he build a real economy? He said he's going to take the oil, but by taking off all the sanctions, that should revitalize the country. If that happens, that's going to show what his model or his idea of the Western Hemisphere is. Does he actually want to bring up his allies and build their economy so they can buy products and bring manufacturing back to the United States? Or is it more like Nick Fuentes is saying, which is just take their shit and leave them high and dry? If that's the case, I think a lot of people will actually turn, and I'll turn against the Trump administration. But my hopes are he's actually going to try to bring up his partners. He's also said he only wants to build relationships with countries that are ideologically aligned as well. So,
and that would not be convenient for even the US. It's more convenient to have Venezuela come up so they can continuously take advantage of Venezuela, not just take everything what they can right now and then leave them like that. That is what China and Iran were doing and have been doing.
And nothing was trickling down to the population itself.
So it's not like, they're taking their oil now. They have no oil because that has all been taken by China and Iran.
They do have tons of oil. They have the most oil. I don't know why you keep saying they have no oil.
What I mean when I say the people have no oil, they have no access to oil, they have no access to fill up their cars, they can't heat up a stove, they can't drive their elderly parents to the hospital, which also isn't there and doesn't exist and has no medicines. So when I say they have no oil, I mean that all the oil the few oil that they're still being able to take out of the ground because they've neglected PDVSA or their oil company for so long is going directly to Iran and China. It's not like it's benefiting the people and now Trump is going to steal oil from the people. The people have no oil.
And I'll say this, overall, I like what's happened so far, but we're going to have a wait and see over the next 3 and 6 months kind of what happens. But everything the Trump administration is doing right now isn't good. And the next couple stories are going to kind of highlight that. Internally, he is turning some really bad policies on here, and they're passing some really bad legislation. So I hope he doesn't do the similar things or try to impose similar legislation in these other countries by pressuring these other governments. Let's get into the next story.
Hold on. Latino's Land says it will be a temporary occupation, and also says, great job, guys, thing. And I guess we have a little bit of a different opinion with that, but I don't know. With Venezuela.
Well, I think we both think it's good that Maduro's gone.
Yes.
But the question is, like, I've already kind of talked about it. I don't want to see permanent boots on the ground. I don't want to see a forever war. So far, it looks like it's completely the opposite. There's not going to be a forever war, but it could change based upon the stability of the country. I mean, I'm sure the Chinese are going to finance massive guerrilla armies to destabilize the country. So the question is, can the current Venezuelan government, the one that's temporarily been put in there, hold it together?
Mm-hmm.
So,
And
okay,
the
let's go into the next story here.
Yes, let's talk about one. I think it's still just an idea or a plan.
And we're just going to play the beginning of this video, but not good what's coming out here.
And I do like Redacted, but I do also think they exaggerate a lot of things or interpret things in the worst way possible. Redacted says the DOJ just rolled out a plan to track and prosecute so-called domestic terrorists.
And this was the same plan the Biden administration had, only they were focused on
the right.
MAGA conservatives and populists. So it's just been reframed. And this is absolutely ridiculous, turning your citizens into terrorists, creating a police state to go after your own citizens, whether it's Trump or whether it's Biden. If Trump sets this precedent by going after leftists, by labeling them domestic terrorists, you better believe if the Democrats get in there, they're going to be doing the exact same thing to conservatives.
Well, yesterday we talked about a new Justice Department directive that plans to track and prosecute domestic terrorists, which is really not a thing. The Constitution does not allow for domestic terrorism because that gives the power for the government to define any dissenters as terrorists. Well, the Trump department is saying, yeah, we want to do that. Here is some of the ways that they are defining domestic terrorist beliefs. I showed you the document this came from, and I just listed opposition to immigration enforcement, extreme views in favor of mass migration. All of these are protected beliefs. Sure, they're leftist, but you're allowed to think those things, especially the last one, support for overthrowing the U.S. government. That's in the Declaration of Independence. So why is the Trump administration broadening their reach now and defining protected beliefs as terrorist beliefs? Here's the document that this came from. It was a response to President Trump's memorandum in September called Countering Domestic Terrorism and Organized Political Violence. Not surprisingly, it was in the wake of the Charlie Kirk assassination that the Trump administration decided to use it to expand
and
their
you can
own
kind
powers.
of leave it there. And that being said, they need to go after people when they commit crimes. They don't need to broaden out the definition of what a terrorist is by creating a domestic terrorist definition. If somebody sets fire to a Tesla dealership, for instance, they can go after that individual crime. But by broadening this out, they're setting a dangerous precedent, which the Democrats are just going to continue if they get into office, only they're going to focus on right-wing citizens.
Mm-hmm. And again, we did see the Biden administration already try to do that, but since labeling Antifa also as an international domestic terrorism, I do agree with that. And they already commit enough crimes as it is. I mean, yes, maybe get a little bit more heavy-handed with the enforcement of it. Like if they spit on a cop, don't just say, oh, well, that leads to nothing. That is actually assault on a police officer. So actually enforce it. And you have enough crazy lefties doing actual crimes or doing actual things that you can prosecute that you don't need to further infringe on people's freedom of speech and freedom of belief.
Well, that's good. He's going after potentially, I mean, not quite yet, but if he does implement this, he's going after thought crimes and speech crimes. And this
the left wants to do.
I mean, this is
and the UK.
Extremely dangerous. Biden literally tried to do this. He labeled MAGA supporters as domestic terrorists. He was able to investigate, but he wasn't able to enforce. Trump may take this a step further. This is bad whether Biden does it. This is bad whether even when Trump does it. The fact is, I actually agree with a lot of those things, going after people for those things, but only when they cross the line into an actual crime, meaning it's a physical crime. If they want to speak things or they want to think things, they're allowed to do that.
And I already think, again, they do commit enough crimes
And-
where you can actually go after them.
One more thing. What makes this extremely dangerous is the fact that Palantir and tracking of the U.S. population over the internet is becoming more and more of a thing, and the technology is actually there now, is what makes these laws so dangerous. You could potentially, this could be the beginning of turning the United States into a police state by going after your own citizens.
But then again, speaking of actual crimes the crazy lefty does commit, is more trans violence. From Nick Sortor, quote, William DeFore, the 26-year-old man who attempted to break into VP or Vice President J.D. Vance's home this morning, is a trans and began using the name Julia, of course. He also has a big donor. He was also a big donor to Kamala Harris and other Democrats. Apparently, his parents were as well.
Yeah, and this was a brazen crime. What happened is he walked around J.D. Vance's house. J.D. Vance doesn't live there right now, in Cincinnati, and he hit every window with a hammer. People originally thought it was somebody trying to break into the house, and then they realized he just went around and broke every single window with a hammer. I'm glad he didn't have a pew-pew or anything like that, and nobody got hurt here.
No, but just the idea of, and that's just the donations, the photo.
And you've seen the windows there. Everyone had a round break in it. That's because he used a hammer. That being said,
example, you can enforce the
that
law
being
about
said,
this.
they should enforce this and punish him for it, but they should not try to press terroristic charges on this gentleman based upon the last story we were just talking about. There's crime enough to put him in jail for. He's still also a young man, so he can be reformed. If you put him in under different terror laws,
he's a woman.
If they put him in under terrorist laws, they might get 20 or 25 years on him. I mean, I wouldn't want to see that happen. I want to see the punishment actually fit the crime here. He broke a bunch of windows out of a house. If he gets a couple of years, okay. I don't want to see the guy do 20 years for that. And that was a despicable crime. I don't agree with it at all.
But again, it was an attack on the vice president, so it's not like it was just on a random person.
The vice president's house when he wasn't in it, and he doesn't currently live there.
But private property.
Yeah, private, and that's what I'm saying. He'll get a couple of years for it.
Okay.
But I do know how a lot of terrorist laws work in the United States, and they have very, very heavy sentencing. I mean, it's going to be the end of that kid's life.
But he decided.
And you have to realize, eventually, the shoe's going to be on the other foot, and the Democrats get back in office.
And that too, and that is also what we were always warning, or I was always warning about in Canada with all the hate speech laws, for example. What happens if the other side gets in and starts to enforce them against you? That is something that people should consider a bit more before they cheer and clap for doing the same to their enemies.
Yeah, okay.
But speaking of private property, from Wokeness, quote, New York City Mayor Mamdani's tenant director, Sia Weaver, will transition from treating property as an individual good to a collective good. So, Venezuela.
I think the reality is that for centuries, we've really treated property as an individualized good and not a collective good. And we are going to transitioning to treating it as a collective good and towards a model of shared equity will require that we think about it differently. And it will mean that families, especially white families, but some POC families who are homeowners as well, are going to have a different relationship to property than the one that we currently have.
And I'm probably more sympathetic to this argument than you are. But what I'm going to say is if they want to build massive socialized housing, that's fine. They already have social housing, which they build for low-income people. But if they want to expand that program, what they need to do is give a benefit to actual homeowners that have already invested in the system. The best way to do that would be no property taxes. DeSantis is talking about doing that in Florida. Trump's talking about wanting to do that nationwide. If you build free housing for hundreds of thousands of people, that's going to drop the property value. A lot of people are going to be upset, but at least if you take property taxes, so you never have to pay taxes on your property once you own it, it gives some kind of benefit to people that already own their homes, and it will create a lot less resentment. The difference here is Mamdani has already talked about how he's going to seize a lot of these properties. He's going to dramatically increase property taxes so it's not tenable for people to actually rent the property and then make improvements on it. So if they choose not to make improvements, he's now going to condemn the property and the city will take control of it. We've already kind of reported on this. It's the worst of both worlds. and it's going to sit the two populations against each other. If they want to build massive social housing, that's fine, but you have to have a benefit for investing in the system and actually buying a property, and that is, or I believe it should be, no property taxes as soon as you have the house paid off.
Was she already in office when she did that, whatever it was, interview?
I'm not sure.
She looked not very professional, in my opinion. But we're also seeing the removal of private property in the UK, in Canada, and all of these very socialist ideas that eventually probably lead to communism don't work out like Venezuela. Nobody's able to afford or own anything.
Yeah, especially in Canada, the relationship between private property and its citizens are seriously in jeopardy because of First Nations right to the land. So the government potentially has completely screwed BC residents going forward. We'll see what happens as this thing plays out in court, but we've reported on it quite a lot.
And private property is one of those things that grants individual freedoms and the ability to own private property and to not have it interfered with by the government, especially in the United States. New York City is still in the United States.
Yeah,
so
the fact
that they're proposing that.
The fact that you even have to pay up property taxes, I believe it's completely unjust.
Yes.
Especially for it's your home. Now you're permanently going to pay rent for the rest of your life. I mean, Trump's already brought this up. A lot of politicians in the United States understand if a tariff comes in that they're going to have a lot more money, and getting rid of property taxes is high on the agenda. So I hope they do. I hope Florida becomes the model of that. Then that being said, Florida has other things. Even if they take away the property taxes, the insurance cost on a house can be up to $50,000 a year, which is crazy.
But another insane socialist, and apparently has not learned anything, is of course Washington. And we do have a state representative, state lawmaker from Washington, Sean Scott, being asked what an example of socialism working and what would that be, and apparently he said Cuba.
But this interviewer did push back, and I thought it was a good exchange here.
I want you to give me one example of socialism you think working well somewhere.
A good example of socialism working well somewhere. This is a really, really cool question. I think of Cuba in particular, very, very high literacy rate, number one. Number two, extremely strong commitment to public health, so much so that when there are other ailments that are happening throughout the hemisphere, there's oftentimes Cuban doctors that you will see on the front lines of public health administration, their commitment to education.
Yeah, and those Cuban doctors, their wages are garnished and given back to the government almost completely. I watched a documentary on that the other day, actually. But
essentially forced to do that.
And we look at the fact that we make some of our largest expenditures in healthcare, which is run a lot of ways along a privatized model in this country, and we don't get the outcomes that this small country has been getting for decades. So that's one example that I can think of that would resonate with pretty much anybody in our state who cares about education or healthcare. Would you disagree with that?
People flee on makeshift rafts and die in the ocean to flee Cuba for the United States.
Yeah, and I think that is something that absolutely we have to be sensitive to. But you asked me about institutions that are working really, really well.
I asked you about places socialism is working, and you chose a country that people will risk their lives to flee from to this country. There's a reason for that, Sean.
There was a revolution in Cuba. That is correct.
They still do it to this day.
Right.
They show up on the beaches of Miami.
Right.
Because they would rather be here and would risk their lives in shark-infested water to flee the country that you just gave me an example of.
And if the situation were reversed, the injuries and the ailments that they sustain as a result of migrating to a place where they believe that they're going to be better off, I believe that they could be treated in a much better way than American healthcare facilities are currently able to treat people. So that's one example that I can think of socialism working very well in public health and in education.
All right. I hate to end on that because that is just a horrible example of socialism working, because it doesn't work.
Healthcare and education.
This is a government that has killed people. It's a government people have fled from. Vietnam, I just had a woman on the show whose father spent 7 years in a re-education camp in Vietnam.
Right. I think in macro terms, a lot of economic systems are going to have faults and problems, but I look at the fact that socialist countries, communist countries in specific, there seems to be more of a floor that is placed in a collective commitment to making sure that if you slide, you're not going to slide all the way out of the ability to make a way for yourself at all.
Do you think America is a great country?
I think that I believe that there are aspects of greatness in the United States, in our people, and in the devotion that we have shown to our institutions and the movements that have made us a more great country than where we started.
Is there anywhere that you would risk your life to flee to? from the United States?
Oh, I was born in the United States. I live here. My life is here. I'm proud to represent the 43rd Legislative District. So I'm not, if this is asking me if I'm running for re-election or not, I don't know what that question was about. But
I'm asking if our country is so bad that you would flee, to risk your life to flee from it.
no, I believe in staying and fighting. I believe in staying and fighting to make what you inherited better than how it was when you got it.
I mean, that was a good series of questions. Just it was his own circular logic that kind of got him here. He couldn't understand why people were fleeing Cuba, but he would not flee the United States. That being said, if you're going to pick a communist country that's the most successful, it would probably be China. The problem with his statement is he's saying in a communist country, it has less of a floor. So if you fall, there's a safety net. No, that's the United States where there's a safety net. As flawed as capitalism is, there's some kind of safety net. There's homeless shelters, there's soup kitchens, there's stuff like that if you fall all the way down to the actual bottom.
It's the whole principle of DEI. There is, you don't fall so far because you're already on the floor of poverty and starvation and being killed for your opinion, your religion, anything you believe, or to be having your private property taken away. So of course there's no floor and you don't fall from the social net because there is no social net. There is dirt grounds and gravel roads. That's all there is.
Yeah, I was actually watching some conservatives the other day talking about this new wave of socialist politicians, and he was very honest, and it's very interesting. What he's saying is they're getting elected because they're running against traditional Democrats who are corrupt. They're actually ideologically a lot less corrupt. They're honest with the things they want, and they're not stealing as much money. So they're actually getting elected, and they're clearing out a lot of the old wing Democrats. So you would expect the left to get a lot more radical, but a lot less corrupt and start offering these social policies.
I don't know.
I think with Mondani in New York, there's going to be a lot of private money being pushed into New York to try to point to him as the example. They need him to succeed so they can repeat that model all over the United States. If he fails, it's going to be hard to prop up socialism in California or a lot of these other states. So I think it's going to be a false sense of success if they get it, because it's only going to be propped up by a lot of private money being funneled in.
Here in Latin America, we have a lot of experience with these socialist experiments, be it Cuba, which eventually turned into communism, Argentina, Mexico with AMLO, Petro, you name any quasi or actual dictatorship from Latin America. And we know that they start a lot of Chavez and Maduro as well. A lot of their what they initially say is, yeah, we're going to be way less corrupt. We're going to actually defeat the corrupt tyrannical governments that are right now taking power of Mexico or whatever country you want to put in. But then they become, and the ultimate goal is to accumulate more and more power, but centralizing it, which actually makes it more corrupt because you take away the levers of checks and balances that usually democracies do have. And in a way that capitalism also has those checks and balances that are important when you centralize absolute and total power within the government. And that is what socialism wants to do.
Well, it's very
institutions don't work. The fact that he was saying like the Cuban healthcare system works better than the American system, that's insane. I do agree the US healthcare system doesn't fully work, and there is no shining beacon as an example of a healthcare system that actually works, but one that prioritizes improvement and prioritizes some sort of progress and so discoveries within the medical field, and actually improving the system is better than what we experienced in Canada, or the side that is more socialist here in Mexico of the healthcare system that also doesn't work. It annoys me when they put healthcare as an example, a good example of socialism, because in every single country it hasn't worked.
We have a ton of stories here.
Sorry. It just, especially now with what's happening in Venezuela and all the socialist lefties and socialist Democrats of America, etc. It's very comfortable. It's very easy to tweet, to talk, to march from the comforts of one of the freest nations on earth, that is the United States of America, where people flee from all of these other countries that you're putting up as examples and that you're trying to defend their dictatorships with Venezuela. It's so comfortable to be able to say that from the US. Go live there if you want. Go to Cuba. Go move to Cuba and see what you think then. Sorry, I've been watching too much X, and people think...
Well, it's also going to be very interesting what happens with Venezuela now, because they're going to probably embrace capitalism. So it's very important that they actually succeed. If they fail under a capitalistic model, or Trump abandons them, or any number of things happen, it's going to have an add-on effect of having a negative view of capitalism, especially with the rise of socialism globally in the United States, in Canada, in a lot of the West. So
Should I read at least some of the comments? Because otherwise it won't make that much sense after we move on from this.
Okay.
Hold on. Where were we at? I will read the RUMBLE comments first. So Ethel says, what the U.S. is going to do now is very simple. Since the U.S. is owned by Israel now, Venezuela will elect a good new Israeli president and be great again.
Yeah, and I said this in the beginning of the show because there was a similar comment. And the woman that just won the Nobel Peace Prize, she's the Israeli pick for the new president of Venezuela. Trump has outrightly stated that he doesn't think she has the support of the Venezuelan people. If she gets in there, it's going to be a lot easier to connect the dots back to Israel. But if somebody else gets elected, I think it's going to be a lot harder to connect those dots back to Israel.
And I think, again, Israel is mentioned way too much, and people think it has way too much of an importance on every single topic. It's not related to every single topic.
But it is related to this topic in Venezuela because the woman that is going to be running for president keeps making it part of the topic. She keeps bringing up Netanyahu. She keeps bringing up Israeli embassies within Venezuela and building one in Israel as well. I mean, yeah, she's an open puppet of the Israeli administration. That's why I think it's important that they have open, fair elections. And I really hope somebody else does win.
Yeah. And somebody else could win, I think, in Venezuela.
She's very much a globalist, very much a leftist. So, I mean, yeah.
Ethel says the U.S. appeared to be a little more efficient in executing a special military operation in Venezuela than Russia and Ukraine, don't you think?
Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about, a forever war. You didn't want to see something happen in Venezuela like is happening in Ukraine, or it happens every other time the U.S. goes in. I mean, Trump's been a lot better about having strategic strikes. I mean, they're going to implement military power here or there. You don't want to see it take the form of boots on the ground or a forever war. If it's strategic, I mean, this was less than half a shift. This whole operation took about 4 hours, which is absolutely insane. They got their primary target and got out. Now, the question is, can they stabilize the country without actually being in the country with military force?
And Ethel says, there's only one country that has America in its name, Managa, make all of North America great again. And I think that should be the plan of a lot of the America First people. It's no good if you make just America great and then you have all the other countries, if you live amongst the terrible countries.
Well, the rest of the West is turning to the left. You're seeing a lot of Central and South America actually embrace conservatism, modern conservative populism, libertarian beliefs. They're turning away from leftism because they had that for well over a decade. So ideologically, they're far more aligned with the US than Europe, than Australia, than even Canada. So if he's going to make this thing work, at least all these countries are becoming ideologically aligned. They're not all quite there yet. But like I said, the Colombian election's coming up, the Brazilian elections coming up, and there's a ton of pressure currently being put on Cuba.
Phil says, private property talk, and says, you should be exempt from taxes on your principal residence when where you actually live. It would make it good for the people and bad for the flip-floppers and large corporations.
Yeah, and I also think there needs to be more rules on only citizens can own property. Corporations can only own a certain amount of property. It shouldn't be used for monetary investments where corporations are buying large skyscrapers, leaving them empty, and then trying to flip them or things like that as investments because they have extra money and they don't want it to be on their books. They want to skirt taxes. So they're investing a lot of it into property. This is what happened to Canada. This is why property values in Canada are literally 10x what they should be. And the government doesn't know what to do because the boomers are their primary voting base. And if the boomers' property value goes down, then the liberals are going to lose power. The next generation is left in the gutter.
Yeah.
And this is why I'm somewhat sympathetic to building some kind of social housing for people that are absolutely impoverished. But if you're going to do that, you can't do it off the backs of people that actually own property. You have to take away their property taxes to make it fair, at least in some degree.
Mm-hmm. And Rafa says, people, please subscribe and like. By the way, how many subs are needed to monetize the channel? We need 1,000.
We need 1,000. So we're still a little ways from there, but our watch hours have been going up dramatically with our lives. So as soon as we hit that 1,000 subscribers, we'll be monetized fairly quickly.
Yes, so thank you so much for subscribing and for all the support as well. And especially Rafa, but everybody else too that has sent in comments.
And thanks for the videos you sent, Rafa. Yes. I watched them on Venezuela today.
And I showed him the cotton baby.
Yeah. Okay, let's continue.
Neo says, can we send Democrats to Cuba and see if they can create a perfect society? I think that would be a great experiment.
I think they already had it. I think they already had their man in power, and that was Maduro.
Exactly.
That was their perfect society, was under Maduro.
Wig says, hey, Nat and Guy. Hello, thank you for being here. Neo says, China's average salary is lower than in Russia. I'm not sure if they can be an example of socialist country. And I don't think people should use China as an example of it actually working, because when it actually started working was when they started implementing some sort of capitalism.
Yeah, I think it's a new kind of model of state capitalist, communist hybrid. So it's interesting that they don't make as much money, or they're not as rich as they project. The average citizen is actually very poor. And this is what I talk about GDP in a country. Sometimes a country can be rich, but their citizens actually have a very low standard of life. That being said, the quality of life has gone up over the decades in China, but it's still very low for the average citizen. What's put on social media and TV are the people that live in the cities. The people that live in the countryside aren't living the greatest lives. No. But the West is having a similar problem where they're bringing in mass immigration to increase their GDP, where the quality of life of individual citizens is going down. That's why new economic models need to kind of be implemented or tested out in different capitalist countries in order to figure out how can we get the best quality of life for the citizens.
And Wig says IQ. Whatever that means. I mean, intellectual quotation, but I don't know what it means in this context. Neo says, I watched a video about healthcare in Russia, and it looks like it works there.
Yeah, there's a lot of things in Russia gets a lot of bad raps. Things aren't perfect, and it's an evolving system. But Russia's very interesting when you actually do research on it. The West constantly tries to demonize it. I like a lot of things that are going on in Russia. A lot of things they still are trying. They still need to evolve on those. So.
Mm-hmm. And Wig says, I subbed. Thank you so much. It really does help. And last time someone asked, like, what can we do to help? And
we usually get one sub per episode. With our lives, we're going to start doing more edited videos. But on the last episode, we actually got 10 subscribers. So that was actually huge. So thank you to everybody that subscribed on the last episode.
Yes.
And for everybody that subscribed this time.
Yes. But moving on, we're still in healthcare. No, we're still in the U.S. Wow. But it has to do with healthcare. From End Tribalism in Politics, quote, they're giving the middle finger to Maha. House Republicans are still planning to slip Section 453 into the upcoming
This was
spending bill,
absolutely disgusting what happened. Sorry, you can keep reading this, but we're going to get into it.
which would provide pesticide companies immunity from being sued for the harm they cause. People like Brett Cooper are calling them out directly. House Republicans are slipping something into our new spending bill. It is Section 453, which would give immunity to huge pesticide companies. I think it would cover 57,000 different chemicals.
This immunity, everybody's kind of aware of it now because of what happened with the jibby jab and these pharmaceutical companies that had complete immunity for their jibby jabs. And now, I mean, they're expanding this into chemicals. They already had a base of this, but now it's being expanded. There should be a no immunity for any company. If your product hurts people, you should be open to lawsuits.
Yes.
House Republicans are slipping something into our new spending bill. It is Section 453, I believe, which would give immunity to huge pesticide companies. I think it would cover 57,000 different chemicals. And these are chemicals that have been linked to cancer and Parkinson's and infertility. And House Republicans are just slipping it in, which feels like they're giving the middle finger to Maha. And so while I am excited about getting rid of paper straws, and I hate them, I think any girl who enjoys her iced lattes every day wants them gone. But it feels like this is a bigger issue that we should be talking about if we're concerned with the chemicals and that sort of thing. House Republicans.
Yeah, and I'll say this is why the midterms are so important. We need to get America First candidates in here. These traditional rhino Republicans, neocons need to go because they'll vote against the interest of normal Americans and they'll vote on the behalf of corporations, whether that corporation's a pharmaceutical company, the military industrial complex, or a number of mega corporations that are in the United States. We need politicians that are going to put citizens first and not corporations first. This goes not just for the U.S., but countries all around the world. The model that's happening in America right now and the revolution that's happening, if it works, people need to start paying attention so they can implement something similar in their own countries, whether it's Doge, getting rid of corruption, or it's Maha and actually putting the health of the citizens first.
Like they said they would.
Yeah. And RFK is doing a fantastic job so far, but when bills like this go into Congress and a lot of the base is traditional GOP neocons, they're going to vote on the behalf of big corporations.
And that's the thing. I do miss Brett Cooper. I feel like she hasn't done much. I mean, she has a baby now and she's kind of on Fox News, but I think Daily Wire was doing good for her. And I don't know if she's being censored or if she just hasn't published as much, but I haven't.
She has a baby, so
I know.
She's probably.
But Isabel Brown also just had a baby. She went with the Daily Wire, and I see her videos all the time. So I don't know if YouTube is trying to.
Yeah, but she's her own boss, so she has the baby. She doesn't have to make videos every day. Brett Cooper, where the other girl works for
Fox.
the Daily Wire.
Brett is with Fox.
Oh yeah, she's with Fox.
So she's kind of also her own.
Yeah, but she might have worked things into that contract, knowing that she had a baby. So yeah.
Either way, like them both. Moving on. More Venezuela talk. From James Fishback, now that Maduro is gone, it's time for the Venezuelan migrants to go back home and make their country great. As Florida governor, I will oversee this great re-migration.
Yeah, and I don't think this is right for Venezuelan people that already have citizenship or are in the pipeline for citizenship, but for illegal migrants that have claimed asylum. If the country can stabilize, I would like to see a re-migration, not just for the United States, but actually it's less so in the United States and more in Chile and Argentina. There are massive swaths of Venezuelans, which I would actually think would be happy to go home if this country is stabilized. So this would actually affect Argentina and Chile a lot more than the U.S.
We have over 100,000 Venezuelan migrants living right here in Florida. Let's give them a country they can move back to so we can remigrate them out of here, whether they want to or not. It's time for them to go. And so I am against foreign wars. I am against military intervention that leads to nation building. But as America first, then we have to recognize this old principle of the Monroe Doctrine. We have to own what happens in our hemisphere. Principally because what happens in Venezuela is directly affecting communities right here in my state of Florida.
Yeah, and this is going to be a big thing. If Trump goes in there, I mean, all of these sanctions are coming off. A certain amount of the oil will go back to Venezuelans, so at least they can heat their house and stuff like that. Even if Trump takes a large portion of the oil, just the sanctions coming off should bring massive investment into the country. If that happens and it's an economic success, then Venezuelans will naturally want to go back there, and they can use this as a model potentially to help re-migrate a lot of immigrants back to Venezuela. But if they can repeat that model in other countries and bring economic success to a lot of South and Central America, a lot of these migrants will want to go back on their own.
And that's another point of why you can't just say, oh, no intervention, no intervention. If you actually are able to bring up other countries that in a way, X, Y, Z way, are affecting your country and the way your citizens live, then that is also America first. And I think people are not on the right are not understanding.
Well, a lot of these South and Central American countries are aware of testing new models that are coming out. A lot of them are pointing to El Salvador on how to fight crime. So they're willing to try new things. And if economic doors can be opened up to them through the U.S. because they want to benefit all countries, primarily in the Western Hemisphere, and pull back from the rest of the world, this could be a huge win for everybody. And that's what I'm hoping happens. That may be a little bit too idealistic, but looking at Venezuela as the base case model, we're going to know going forward, is this a good thing or not?
And I think with El Salvador and bringing up El Salvador, that is a great example of it, some kind of help and intervention from the US, but also a stronger hand showing that it does work and it does help and it does lead to prosperity. And now people from the US wanting to move to El Salvador because of the change that they have seen. So it is not impossible, but it just has to be well managed and directed, and not taking the foot off the pedal.
Well, if you look at Bukele and
he's not great.
If you look at Bukele in El Salvador, and I watched a ton of his interviews and his ideology and how he thought he was going to have to address all the problems in El Salvador, and crime was one of the big things he said, and corruption are the two big things he had to clean up before he could do anything else, before economic prosperity could be allowed to happen in the country organically. A lot of other South American countries are realizing his model actually worked there, and it could have worked in their country as well. The problem is you have to be extremely tough on crime. He's also bringing in a lot of rehabilitation into the country now. So these aren't forever prisons. He's actually bringing them into work camps to reskill them. So once they get out of prison, they know how to do construction, be an electrician or a plumber. So there's these massive colleges being opened up in a lot of these prisons.
But also understanding that not all of them can be reformed.
Yeah,
so there are some that will stay there forever. Moving on. From Real AF with Andrew Frisella, he warns President Trump, you've lost touch with your base. Your kids will be blackballed from America.
And hold on, I just wanted to talk about this. A lot of conservative commentators are just bombing Trump right now and hating everything he does, saying this is a forever war. We're in a war, boots on the ground. This is not what's happening. This is a strategic operation, in or out. If Trump makes this a long-term war, I'm going to be against him too. I think a lot more of his base is, but a lot of the people in the commentary space are just looking at all the negative things the United States has done in the past with the forever war in Iraq and in Afghanistan. This isn't necessarily that yet. If it turns into that, then I'm willing to go there. But I don't like this take, and this is a similar take to what a lot of other people have.
I'm going to say this right now, and I mean this. Okay, Donald Trump, you've lost touch with your fucking base. You've lost touch with reality of what people actually want to see, and the people around you are either not telling you the truth or you're fucking in on it. And if you're not in on it, I would appreciate for you and I to have a discussion so I could inform you about what these people really want. Okay, so this can go on Twitter, and you can have your people call me, and I will get my fucking happy ass on an airplane, and I'll sit down and enjoy a motherfucking Big Mac with you, and we will fucking get real clear about what people actually want, because the motherfuckers around you are either full of shit or you're in on it.
Yeah,
and that's where people believe right now. Okay, and here's the thing.
A lot of people believe that.
Yes, and here's the thing. Okay, I said on last show, you're going to go down as the president who had the opportunity to fix this country and chose not to. And you might say, oh, well, that doesn't really fucking matter. Well, you know what? It's going to matter, because your kids are going to get blackballed in America. Okay. Your legacy is going to be ruined. The Trump name will be a fucking joke. And I know you care about those things.
Yeah.
And you should. And I truly believe that deep down, he still cares about America. Maybe I'm stupid for fucking thinking that. He needs to understand, and I stand by what I said on the last show.
Sorry for the language. I didn't realize he cursed that much.
Can these people not swear?
That being said, Trump is doing the best he can here. I mean, he's literally fighting a global war against a lot of people that are against him. A lot of three-letter agencies, whether that's in the EU, in China, Russia. I mean, there's a lot of things coming at him simultaneously. A lot of people would like to see the US dollar fall. He's trying to not only keep the boat afloat, but steer it in the direction the best he can. He's pushing back against a lot of the globalist policies that were coming in, a lot of the cultural issues that were coming in. He's not perfect. I don't like what happened with the Epstein files. I don't like what happened with a lot of different things. That being said, you have to give him some breathing room, because where we would have been if Kamala Harris was in there is in a much worse place. And after Trump, maybe we can get somebody even better. And if Trump can at least steer it in the right direction, the next person can bring it even further there.
But in my opinion, all the ones that are going down this same line of complaints against Trump after the Venezuela thing are just further showing their ignorance, because they apparently don't understand that, yes, everything is connected in some sort of way. And to make, once again, I keep saying it, to make America great again and put America first, you also do have to manage the hemisphere and the sphere of influence that the US has. And if you want to continue keeping that sphere of influence that brings a lot of the benefits that you enjoy and that you're demanding your country to give you, then they have to have some sort of management around them.
But people are really traumatized from what the neocons did with having spheres of influence and forever wars. So it's very much a tightrope Trump has to walk. He has to do strategic strikes like what he did in Venezuela. If he's going to do something like that, he can't have a forever war.
But it's not a war.
But I said,
I know,
it's
but
not a
to all
forever
these
war.
people, to all these idiots that are saying it's war, it's
I'm
not
aware, but they're traumatized from what the United States has done over the past.
Untraumatize yourselves and learn a little bit of history from Latin America as well.
They've believed in the United States in different administrations over and over again. They don't want to see forever wars. They don't want to see boots on the ground. So,
but they won't. That's the thing. Okay.
They might, because I'm going to tell you why they might. You have people.
They build a military base.
You have people like Ben Shapiro in this administration absolutely praising him. Neocons like Ben Shapiro, and they're preparing from the inside of this administration, hoping they can get Rubio into power, so then they can go right back to their neocon agenda. And yeah, the Western Hemisphere will be their sphere of influence, but they'll rule it just like they try to rule the world. They want a lot of people want an America First movement where if they're going to have a sphere of influence, it's done by having cooperation with both countries, so both countries are successful.
Yes.
And it helps the United States.
But to do that, you can't do it in a zero intervention way. That's just
nobody's saying that.
No, there are a lot of people saying that. They're saying we don't want intervention, we don't want wars, and they mean zero intervention. When yes, you do have to, if you want the benefits of the rest of Latin America to also help the US, you do have to have the US in there in some sort of way, because right now it's an effing disaster. For 50 years we've had dictators and communism and socialism, and the destruction that it has cost us the fact that we are not able to manufacture or do whatever the US can take advantage of.
Yeah, but people are aware of what might come after Trump, and there's three options really. You're either going to have Democrats get in there, whether that's far Democrats or not so far Democrats, neocons get in there, or a populist America First / MAGA candidate hybrid. And two of those three are bringing forever wars guaranteed. The Democrats are bringing forever wars. The neocons are bringing forever wars, whether that's in countries like Venezuela or most likely Europe with Russia to have World War III. Mm-hmm. There's only one possible candidate going forward, and that would be an America First populist, maybe a hybrid MAGA candidate, and even that might get you in a forever war. JD Vance right now is the best candidate they have, but I'm open to other suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, when they say this is a war, that's dumb.
It could very easily turn into a war.
And I continue to say, and we both said it, I don't think the U.S. should come into Mexico without the support of the Mexican government, because we know how embedded cartels are within the military. So if it turns into all of Mexico, both the good ones and the bad ones, which is exactly the same, going against America, that would actually become a war. So, but the fact that Claudia Sheinbaum continues to praise Maduro and continues to say that she supports him, she's putting herself in a sticky situation. But if that happens, then I will say Trump should not be coming in a full front, boots on the ground way, but I don't think he's that stupid.
Trump's fighting Canada, Trump's fighting Mexico, he's fighting Europe, he's fighting globalists, he's fighting neocons internally. I mean, you name it, they're coming from him at all sides. He's done 10 to 20 things that I can say are absolutely amazing, and he's probably done 6 or 7 things I don't really like. That being said, I'll take an administration that can do 20 amazing things, because the last administration did absolutely none.
And even the last administration put a warrant out for Maduro's arrest, and now they're like completely forgot that they did that.
But so far, so good with what's happened in Venezuela. I'm glad to see Maduro gone. That being said, I don't want to see a permanent military presence put there. Let the Venezuelans kind of work it out.
And now another thing that, if actually enacted and true, would be another great example of something that's actually good for not just America, but everybody else. USA cancels all money from NGOs. Wow, it's finally over. The fraud scheme that has existed around the world with organizations raking in millions from Western countries has come to an end.
This is absolutely fantastic. And I don't think this is just lip service. There have been dots laid down on the page, and each one's being connected. First, it was USAID. A lot of NGO money was going out through USAID. They've completely shut that down. Then they opened Doge. Then they shut down Doge, but they permanently implanted it in a lot of different organizations within the U.S. government. So each office has its own Doge division. Now we're seeing they're going to go even further to root out permanent monies going out to NGOs. I mean, this is just another step along the path of what they did with USAID. I'd like to see this. They said they're still going to give certain monies, but they're going to give it directly to the organization or directly to the government, and they're going to want them to follow through to see how the money was actually spent. When you have a middleman like an NGO, 60, 70, even 80% of that money just disappears.
The United States has spent billions of dollars over the years in helping with health strategies all across the world. What we learned over time, and especially after coming here, is that oftentimes, and I'm oversimplifying it, but this is an accurate description, what would happen is we would go to a country and say, we're going to help you with your healthcare needs. Then we would drive over to Northern Virginia somewhere, find an NGO, one of these organizations, give them all the money, tell them go to this country and do their healthcare program for them. That NGO would then take about some percentage of that money for their overhead and administrative costs. And by the time it got down to it, the host country had very little influence. It was sort of imposed on them. And only a percentage of the overall money ever actually reached the patients and the people on the ground that we were trying to help because of these costs. This makes no sense. So why are we hiring American and international NGOs to go into other countries and run healthcare systems that are parallel and sometimes in conflict with the healthcare systems of the host country? If we're trying to help countries, help the country. Don't help the NGO to go in and find a new line of business. And so that's what the model that we're breaking. We're not doing this anymore. We are not going to spend billions of dollars funding the NGO industrial complex while close and important partners like Kenya are either have no role to play or have very little influence over how healthcare money is being spent. Bottom line is, if you want to help a country, work with that country.
Yeah, and he went even further on another clip that I had seen, but I'm liking how they're giving these explanations. That being said, this is something J.D. Vance should be announcing, or maybe even Donald Trump. Rubio is getting a lot of shine lately because of Venezuela, because of the pressure he's putting on Cuba, and he's being given a lot of these big announcements, like stopping funding to these NGOs. This is a great policy. This definitely plays to the base. I don't want to see Rubio leapfrog J.D. Vance into a presidency, because that's going to mean having a neocon in office.
Yeah, and I don't like Rubio, but I do agree that a lot of these NGOs, and we see them a lot here in Mexico too, from the U.S., receiving money from the U.S., are just money laundering operations, and it actually goes to help the baddies in the country that they're trying to help. And I think a lot of the Democrats that were helping set that up and that were the main liners that were doing that knew that as well, because they benefited from it.
And a lot of people don't know there's thousands of NGOs where money just goes out. Rubio said in his other clip, usually what they do, they see there's a problem, so they go back to Virginia. Then they find an NGO in Virginia. They give them billions of dollars and they say, go fix this problem. I'm glad to hear that system's kind of coming to an end now. That being said, what they were probably wanting to do, they probably wanted to go in there and surgically pick one NGO not to have money and keep the good ones. They just realized it was so rife with corruption. Well, let's just get rid of the whole system and give the money directly to either the government or the organization.
And actually, speaking of that, and in relation to Venezuela, we have seen once again how these NGOs might be operating and helping the retardedness out of the left. From Wall Street Mav, within hours of news breaking about Maduro's capture, protests broke out in New York City with professionally printed signs and flags in support of Venezuela and other third world countries like Cuba and Palestine. Who's paying for all this? Any foreign funding? And there have been a lot of investigations going into how these lefty, insane protesters get paid. And a lot of times it's very well organized. And it's just, but a lot of actual printed signs saying no war with Venezuela. Free President Nicolas Maduro.
And there's been a lot of Venezuelans going out to these protests saying, you don't live in these countries, you don't know the conditions that we were living in. And the fact that I'm not seeing any Venezuelans out there, and I'm seeing massive celebrations within Venezuela and within Venezuelan communities. Yeah.
In Venezuela, there weren't that many, because then they told them not to go back into their houses because of the regime is still being there. But I mean, here's an example of somebody confronting one of these moronic protesters that is actually from Venezuela.
Venezuela, you are for my country. What part of Venezuela you are? 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 You are not for my country. 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 Venezuela.
Yeah, and if they do go from a socialist model to a capitalist model, I mean, very rarely do you see shining examples of this, especially in the modern context. So this is going to be a highly charged political issue going forward, based upon the success or the failure of the country of Venezuela.
And for me, it's actually funny because I do recognize and know the difference between like a Mexican accent, a Venezuelan accent, a Spanish accent, a Chilean accent. And it is very obvious when it is the actual Venezuelans celebrating and everybody else, be them Mexicans or just white liberals from New York or from the US, trying to say, oh, free Maduro, free Maduro. Almost none, if not none of the Venezuelans are having it, except some of the ones that are still in Caracas that are still supportive in a way, or threatened to be supportive of the dictatorship of Nicolas Maduro and Chavez before him, that are still saying, oh, liberate him. But the ones that escaped all that context and that actually lived through it are the ones that are trying to fight back and say, don't be stupid.
Okay, let's go into Canada
now. Speaking of
and this is our original home
dictatorships.
country before we moved to Mexico.
Well,
You're
my home
originally
country is
from there.
Mexico, but yours. There we go. So yes, let's see what's going on in Canadian land. From Lisa Robinson, Canadians deserve to know about our health minister. Canada's health minister is not medically trained, not a physician, not an epidemiologist, not a public
You
health
can just
scientist.
play the clip here.
Okay. I was giving a bit of context.
Hey guys, Councillor Lisa Robinson here. Let's start with a fact Canadians deserve to know right out of the gate. Canada's health minister is not medically trained. She's not a physician, she's not an epidemiologist, she's not a public health scientist. Her academic background is in social and organizational psychology. That's the study of human behavior, group dynamics, compliance, authority, and institutional messaging. Now you're asking yourself, why does this matter? Well, because last week, the same health minister told Canadians we can no longer trust the United States as a reliable partner on health information, including vaccines. Not because of new medical evidence emerged, not because the science suddenly changed, but because the politics did. So ask yourself why. Why would a health minister trained not in medicine, but in behavioral influence move to shut down comparison, debate, and questioning between countries? Why is the response not, let's examine the evidence together, but instead, don't listen to them? That's not medicine. That's political messaging. Here's what people need to understand. When skepticism is framed as harmful, when questions are treated as threats, when debate is discouraged instead of welcomed, the goal is no longer health. The goal becomes compliance. And that's the end game. In that system, trust is not earned through transparency or outcomes. It is now demanded through authority. Disagreements become misinformation, questions become dangerous, and independent thought becomes a behavior to be managed. That's not how science functions. That is how behavioral policy functions. That is social influence in service of power. Exactly the field our Canadians' health minister is trained in. And notice how this pattern doesn't stop at health. Across all levels of government, questions are shut down, debate is restricted, and those who challenge decisions are routinely labeled, dismissed, or marginalized. And in some cases, people aren't just called names like me, they're financially punished, professionally isolated, or made examples of, incrementally, through process. Just enough to teach others not to follow. That doesn't strengthen democracy.
Okay, you can leave it there. And that being said, we've seen this in the jibby jab era. It's crazy that 72 jibby jabs were mandated for youth. The U.S. has just changed that policy and gone from 72 to 11, which is far more reasonable. The 11 they kept were actually the 11 that were researched and they had data on that they could approve. Canada doesn't want to follow that same trend. MAHA seems to be working in the United States. I like a lot of the policies that they've brought in. I wish I would see more countries kind of follow in that model, because when it was Anthony Fauci in power, the entire globe wanted to follow that model, and he ended up being wrong.
And with Canada especially being trying or attempted to criticize anything that the U.S. is doing regarding healthcare, we know Canada's healthcare system doesn't work. We know the wait times, and we know that they have been criticized over and over again. Same as in with other quasi or actually socialist countries or models of healthcare, like the Nordic countries. A lot of people, actual citizens, are coming out and saying, yes, you all praise our great free healthcare. It actually doesn't work, and it doesn't actually get us better, healed, and it's making us die sooner.
Okay, we can go into Latin America now.
Should I read some of the U.S. comments? Because we kind of never went through those. Because we have a few.
Okay, and then skip the other Canadian story because it was supposed to be funny, but we're running out of time.
Yes. Wig says, I think an intervention in Venezuela is well within our interests. The Western Hemisphere belongs to America. But
yeah, and I definitely say, it's within their sphere of interest, but they need to have a model where both countries are going to come up and benefit one another. If the U.S. is going to bring manufacturing back, which that's the long-term vision Trump is trying to implement, he's going to need customers for those products. He's going to need to bring the economies of Central and South America up so he has buyers for those products. Also, the U.S. is going to have a lot of Venezuelan oil right now. That's going to help them transition into nuclear. Once they're transitioned into nuclear, all these South and Central America countries also have refining plants, especially Mexico, so he can redistribute a lot of that oil into Central and South America to boost their economies as well.
And then you know more about this topic. It won't show up because it's too long. But Wig says, bruh, Russia is not a great power. They are fighting against Ukraine in an effing trench warfare like they're in World War I. They only have any respect at all because they still have their 80s nuclear arsenal.
Yeah, they're the weakest of the three major powers, and that's why they always justify what they do through international law, even though the rest of the world doesn't see that. They'll always quote international law. Putin used to be a lawyer, and he'll always give it examples of how the EU had set the precedent and how the US had set the precedent, and that's why he's justified it in his actions. He's actually very scared of other countries because he is the weakest of the three powers. But the reason those are the three powers is not just because they have strong militaries, but because they have the ability to manufacture their own military weapons. Other countries don't have that ability, at least not in mass. The EU has outsourced that to the United States. What gives you the ability to be a world power is not only to have weapons, but to manufacture those weapons for yourself. Russia's economy is very interesting, though, because it's what's called a siege economy. They've completely internalized their economy, and then they've added external trade. That external trade, they can still survive without that. They're completely prepared to be cut off from the rest of the world. There's very few other economies in the world that could survive if cut off from the world economy.
You know a lot more about that subject. I mean, that's why I put you on screen. Wig also says, and it also doesn't show up, but says, if Israel is going to trade up with Russia and China and you find yourself being a critic of such an arrangement, then wouldn't you be obligated to support the Venezuela stuff?
I didn't understand. I didn't understand what he meant by trade up.
Okay, if Israel is going to trade up with Russia and China and you find yourself being a critic of such an arrangement, then wouldn't you be obligated to support the Venezuela stuff?
What is I don't understand what he means by trade up.
I don't understand either. To like trade with, I guess, or like to go with Russia and China instead of the US?
Yeah, I mean, there's a big possibility that a lot of people shift. I mean, ideologically, Europe's no longer really aligned with the United States. Now, the European citizens are, or a large portion of are, but the elites aren't. They're starting to emulate the Chinese model far more than the American model.
Because it goes into it further. So,
okay.
Sorry. Says seems also doesn't show up. Seems totally backwards to say that you're concerned Israel is going to move into the Russian and Chinese sphere, and this is why Venezuela is happening, and this is why Venezuela happening is a bad thing. The biggest oil deposit in the world is just off of our shores. This is an unalloyed win if you are actually patriotic.
Yeah, I don't mind seeing what happened with Venezuela at all. I think there's a lot of add-on benefits. I think China doesn't respect international law. Just last week, they completely surrounded Taiwan, not only with boats, but with planes. We're talking hundreds of these things. Now they want to claim that U.S. isn't respecting international law. Maduro definitely didn't respect international law when he was murdering and slaughtering people and running his country, and he didn't actually win an election, but he wants to claim protections from international law, yet he doesn't want to respect international law. Now, that being said, I don't think the U.S. follows international law either, especially when they went into Afghanistan, Iraq 1, Iraq 2. So, yeah.
But for me, it's not even Maduro the one that is more stupidly claiming international law, because he's an idiot, but Claudia Sheinbaum, the Mexican president, and presidents and prime ministers in the EU, and certain people that should not be saying international law that are using that as an excuse as to why Trump continues to be bad, even though he did a great thing objectively.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pure political power that we're seeing right now. China wants to take Taiwan, especially after what's happening in Venezuela here. So the U.S. is going to attempt to deter them. I guarantee it. They're not going to let China have Taiwan because of the assets that are on that island right now. And they haven't built those manufacturing facilities for chips in the United States yet. And even once those facilities are built, I don't think they're going to be as good as the one in Taiwan.
So it says these non-interventionists are only non-interventionists for America because it benefits Russia, perhaps noticing, and white nationalism fails because it's always been propped up by U.S. adversaries. From Jockey to UNZ Review, so many of these people are assets, whether knowing or unwitting.
Yeah, well, I would say I'm not just on the U.S. side when they go into Venezuela, but I've actually said that I believe the EU is far more responsible for this war with Ukraine than Russia actually is. They said not 1 inch further east, and then they went country by country by country, and Russia warned them year after year after year, and there were multiple documents put out by the United States intelligence as well as European intelligence saying Ukraine was that line. It was the red line that if you crossed it, that Russia was going to do something, and they did something. And the day before, they actually went in. Zelensky was asking for nuclear weapons, and he was asking to join the EU. He literally crossed that red line, and then Russia did something. So.
And Wig at the end says, sorry for the tangent. I went on, and thank you for answering my comment.
Yeah, well, and I'm fine with that. I'm not going to agree with everybody on everything. I have some pretty radical opinions on a lot of different things. So, yeah.
No, but he was saying thank you.
Yeah.
And Rafa says, those VHS transitions are pretty cool. Thank you. Took me a while to make them.
Took a while to do them.
But that's what I've been doing all of this December. And then wait until you see edited videos is all I'm going to say. That we're still working on. Ethel says about Canada. Oh, and says the audio is back in Rumble.
It came back.
Thank you.
I was telling you to turn it off too.
Yeah, and thank you, Ethel, for she's also putting chapter markers as to what he's talking about.
Thank you.
Thank you for that as well in the chat. Says about Canada. I agree about Canada, but having non-doctors as healthcare ministers, but it's not the main problem. RFK is not a doctor either, but he shines. It's something else that makes it a problem for Canada.
Yeah, RFK is very, very special because he was a lawyer before this, and he took on massive corporations, whether it was in the military-industrial complex or in the pharmaceutical industry, and he had to do a ton of research. He knows all the experts. His family has been in government as well. So when he first got into the Trump administration, into his position, I was very hard on him because he wasn't doing anything. But what he was doing was approving research papers and putting in all the paperwork. So then when he did start making moves, he was able to quote those research papers. So it was hard to kind of push back against the legislation he was bringing in or the moves that he was making. He was actually able to show that over 50 vaccines had never had research done on them, and he was able to implement that research paper. What that led to later was changing the vaccine schedule from 72 to 11 jibby jabs, which was great.
Ethel also says, bring on the freelance story. Lol, given the situation, would it be reasonable for Canadians to pay 2026 taxes directly to Zelensky and skip the line?
It's absolutely per capita. Canada gives more money to Ukraine than any other country, which is insane. I have a clip coming up later when we get into the Canadian section a bit about Christina Freeland, who used to be the finance minister in Canada, and now she's somehow on the ground in Ukraine doing some kind of ministerial work. That being said, she's talking about we need more Canadian judges that speak Ukrainian in Canada if we want less corruption, which seems absolutely insane. We have her on camera saying this.
Confession through projection, as Robert Barnes would say.
Okay, let's go to Latin America now.
Okay, we need to do the thing. Oh, it did. Oh, it was working. I think I played it twice.
Okay.
I just wasn't
it
on
didn't
the
pop
thing.
up. It didn't pop up on our screen though.
It didn't? It did on this, but I didn't have OBS open, so you couldn't see it.
Okay.
But let's start with Latin America.
Still working out the kinks.
Yes. Still getting used to it because I'm the one that switches and my buttons are all changed. From Eric Doherty, he says, boom, President Trump fires back at Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum after she criticized his Maduro capture.
Oh, and we do live in Mexico now. Yeah. We left Canada
I am from Mexico.
We didn't agree with the political situation there. That being said, when I was gathering the stories for Latin America, it was almost all Mexico. I mean, the amount of statements Trump and the Trump administration was making targeting Mexico, it almost seems like Mexico is the long-term target of these dominoes when it comes to Venezuela, when it comes to Colombia, when it comes to Cuba. It seems like they're trying to cut off the base resources of Mexican cartels, and eventually they want to come into Mexico and pressure the Sheinbaum administration.
He's playing for the Sao Paulo domino.
Well, it wasn't meant to be, and we're very friendly with her. She's a good woman, but the cartels are running Mexico. She's not running Mexico. The cartels are running Mexico. And we could be politically correct and be nice and say, oh, yes, she is. No, she's She's very frightened of the cartels. They're running Mexico. And I've asked her numerous times, would you like us to take out the cartels? No, Mr. President. No, please. So we have to do something because we lost. The real number is 300,000 people, in my opinion. They like to say 100,000. 100,000 is a lot of people, but the real number is 300,000 people. And we lost it to drugs, and they come in through the southern border, mostly the southern border. Plenty come in through Canada, too, by the way, in case you don't know. But they come in through the southern border, and something's going to have to be done with Mexico. Well, it wasn't meant to be.
And Trump put it the nicest of everybody in his administration. We're going to show Anna Paulina Luna in a moment, and she didn't mince her words. I mean, it's very interesting what's going on here. Sheinbaum is cooperating a lot with the Trump administration because they want to forge a new tariff deal. That being said, it looks like Trump's going to go year to year. I think he's going to give Mexico a good deal, but he's going to do it 1 year at a time so he can dangle that carrot in front of him. And as he connects more and more economic ties with the United States and Mexico and starts getting rid of Chinese influence in the Western Hemisphere, eventually he's going to be able to pressure Sheinbaum economically enough where she's going to have to cooperate to kind of go against the cartels herself with the Mexican military or allow the American military in to some extent.
But at the same, Sheinbaum and AMLO for the past 7.5, almost 8 years have been in the whole, again, for Sao Paulo and helping the regimes that Trump now wants to topple. So I think, yes, Mexico will be the crown in all of his domino plays, but it's going to take longer. And I don't think it's going to be as explicit as a lot of people think it's going to be. It's not going to be boots on the ground. I think it's going to be pretty much covert missions, having people or other cartels think that they're destroying each other when it's actually U.S. intervening in that.
I disagree. I don't think I don't think Mexico is going to be the crown jewel in anything Trump wants to do because there's not enough time for Trump to do it. There's too many more dominoes to fall. I think he's going to get all the other dominoes, perhaps, maybe not Brazil, because Brazil has banned a lot of social media and other things. So I think they're going to be able to maintain a far left government. That being said, if J.D. Vance gets in or Marco Rubio gets in or whoever gets in after Trump, I think the groundwork's going to be laid for Mexico. That being said, if a Democrat gets in, Mexico is going to be safe, and all those countries are very likely to turn back towards socialism the other way.
Maybe. Well, let's see what Ana Paulina Luna said.
Yeah, and this girl didn't mix her words. I really like her.
Does.
She goes down conspiracy rabbit holes all the time. I go down conspiracy rabbit holes all the time, but she speaks her mind even more so than Trump.
Eric Doherty says, Ana Paulina went berserk.
One of the most corrupt countries in the world, and it's a shame. They had one of the bloodiest election cycles this past cycle, and they killed journalists that were covering it. They've killed their own elected officials that were actually trying to fight the cartel. So I really don't care what the president of Mexico has to say, because in my opinion, she's only in that position because she's been installed. And if they actually had a good president, you'd see Mexico not being run by cartels. One of the most corrupt countries.
Yeah, and I mean, in Mexico, everybody calls Claudia Sheinbaum presidenta, which means she's the cleaning lady of AMLO. Like she's just there to do AMLO's bidding.
Yeah, and there was actually far more people that came out in the after the strikes on Venezuela and actually started talking about Mexico, surprisingly. So they're definitely trying to. I think the main target is actually the middlemen in Mexico, which are the cartels in Mexico.
But I think, again, it's not convenient for anybody for the U.S. to come in explicitly and without the support of the Mexican government. They do need that.
They need to get the election in Colombia to go the other way in 2 months. They still need to put pressure on Cuba, and maybe something can happen in Brazil. If those three things happen, Mexico is going to be a lot easier to come into. And if they don't get those dominoes to fall, I don't even know if they're going to want to come in, because it's going to be a hard-fought war.
Speaking
and
of
nobody
Cuba,
wants to see a forever war with boots on the ground.
Speaking of Cuba, quote from Lord Bibo, Trump hints at Cuba. It's a failing nation. It's a failed nation, not failing.
Go ahead. Is there a message for Cuba and Dios Canal? Well, Cuba's an interesting case. Cuba is, not doing very well right now. That system has not been a very good one for Cuba. The people there have suffered for many, many years. And I think Cuba is going to be something we'll end up talking about, because Cuba is a failing nation right now, very badly failing nation. Go ahead.
And there was another clip as well where Rubio was standing right behind him. He went even further, saying, yeah, we've already discussed Cuba. And then he brought Rubio up to actually talk about it. In Rubio's mind, Rubio's a neocon, and he has a lot of connections to Cuba. Cuba's the crown jewel in his mind. That's what he actually wants. He realized that Venezuela had to be first, so I'm sure he put a lot of pressure on Trump to go into Venezuela because his personal goal is actually Cuba for him, his family, and a lot of his voter base that used to be his voter base.
So let's see what Diaz-Canel in Cuba actually said in response. So from Ali London, quote, Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel threatens America, says Cubans will make them pay a heavy price for Venezuela. I'd love to see them try.
And this is in Spanish.
Oh, do you want me to translate it? Or like read the translation?
A little bit.
Okay. The very dark object of imperialism is Venezuelan oil, the lands and natural resources of Venezuela. No, imperialists. This is not your backyard, nor a disputed territory. Do not accept or recognize the Monroe Doctrine. No outdated kings or emperors, which they are, for Venezuela, and of course, also for Cuba. We are prepared to give even our own blood, even our own lives, but we will make them pay a very high price. These are not time for half measures. These are times for defining our stance and taking a stand against fascism and imperial barbarism. Down with imperialism.
He's got his Venezuelan flag there as well. That being said, he's not going to go into Cuba like he did Venezuela. He's going to cut him off from resources. He's already cut him off from oil. Mexico's kind of stepping in and giving them oil. I'm sure Trump is going to tell Mexico to stop those oil shipments, and that's going to put even more pressure on Cuba. He's going to put so much financial pressure on Cuba. They're going to try to spark a color revolution in that country, and I think that's how they want the change to happen there. I think in Colombia, they want to get it done through a vote. In Venezuela, they did it through plucking out Maduro himself and putting in a temporary government. I don't think they can get Brazil. Brazil is just too strong, and they're too well connected with the BRICS. The BRICS needs Brazil to survive. They're very aware of all the tactics that the U.S. may use in the next election. That being said, if Trump can flip that Brazilian election, I mean, there's nothing left on the board after that.
But with Cuba, I don't think it's going to be a color revolution. The people are starving. How are they going to stand up and start a revolution? It's way too weakened, and there's no resources to even try to start a color revolution.
Well, you would say they have nothing to lose, but they have one thing left to lose, and that's their life. They have minimal amounts of food. If Trump stops the oil from flowing in, that's going to cause a lot of mass panic in that country. And then that's when you're going to have them at their wits' end in a possible color revolution. And especially when they see what's happening in Venezuela and their president's holding up a Venezuelan flag and they know what just happened there and they know change can possibly happen, that could also help foment a revolution within that country.
Maybe, but I mean, again, we do know Florida, Sao Paulo, they're all amiguis, or they're all friends with each other, all these dictators.
Well, Russia and China has a ton of influence, and a lot of boats that come into that country to supply that country is from China and Russia. And strategically, the United States does not like to have a country aligned with Russia and China that close to their shores. It's 90 miles off of their coast. And especially when they're doing operations like what's happening in Venezuela, they don't want any question marks in Cuba.
Well, moving on to, and we did briefly speak about Maria Corina Machado, which is the person that a lot of people were saying might be the one to take over. But Trump, surprising some people at least, decided not to, and to actually put the the current vice president of dictator Nicolas Maduro as the one in charge during the transition period.
Yeah, and I was glad they didn't put her in, and I hope she's not going to be installed. That being said, I know she is the Israeli pick.
Shadar Avazra says, President Trump confirms that pro-Israel Maria Corina Machado is not being considered to run Venezuela.
The location of opposition leader Machado, and have you been in contact with her?
No, we haven't. No, we haven't.
Mr. President, do you have any hesitations about Machado? Mr. President, on Monday...
I think it would be very tough for her to be the leader. She doesn't have the support within, or the respect within the country. She's a very nice woman, but she doesn't have the respect to be the leader.
And long before Trump went in, people were warning him about if he gets rid of Maduro and he installs the globalists, he's going to have just as many problems. So I think he's very aware of that. That being said, I know Israel is putting a ton of pressure to get her in there. If they do get her in there, I mean, we've already seen it in the comments today. People are saying that she's going to be a Zionist shill. And I think they're going to lose a lot of global support. If they want to have an alignment with Israel, that's fine. They need to do it much more privately with a candidate that isn't as outwardly supportive.
Mm-hmm. That was it for Latin America.
Oh, that was it for Latin America.
So I'll read some of the comments. Well, let me read the
I'm going to use
Latin
the
America.
restroom where you read the comments.
I'll read the Latin America comments by myself. But I want to wait for this one. Okay, fine. Wig says, I like you too. Thank you so much. We like you too. Thank you for being here. Walker. Hello, Walker. Walker says, hello, Nat Guy. Who would have ever thought that nothing ever happens? Now it's something that happened. Exactly. And starting 2026 in an interesting, if not a good way, a lot of people would say a good way. I would say a good way. But again, I do think those criticizing Trump and saying that this is a forever war, both on the left and the right, are moronic and are not understanding and don't understand, maybe because they're way too individualistic, in my opinion, and some of them way too isolationist, the left way too stupid to actually realize the implications and why this is actually maybe a good thing for the U.S. as well.
And I could hear the comments.
Okay.
And thank you for the one guy that said he liked us, because I find myself very unlikable. I very often think, God, who's actually going to ever watch the show? So
I mean, I'm married you. I'm here.
Well, I don't have
I
don't have much of a personality.
Yes,
I'm
you
not
do.
very
He
nice.
does, but
I'm
people
not
don't realize.
I'm not humorous.
You are nice. Maybe
I said, thank God we got assets now. Maybe somebody will actually watch the show.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
But what Walker said something as well.
Yes, Walker says, hello, Nat Guy. Who would have ever thought that nothing ever happens?
Oh
Now
yeah,
it's
Walker
something.
and Rafa used to watch my pop culture show, which I used to talk politics on, and I was always talking Venezuela. It finally happened, I guess.
Exactly. We've been talking about this for 6 months, about 6 months.
And I said eventually it would happen, but
Neil says Ana Paulina and AOC are different sides of the same coin. Yes, exactly. And that's why I also don't.
And I do like Ana Paulina a lot, but man, she has a lot of Botox. Her forehead does not move.
Walker says, and longer messages for some reason don't show up. I'm going to work on it. But Walker says, to be honest, the operation was extremely successful. That's undeniable. However, if the Democrats return to power in the future, Trump could be in serious trouble. And the countries that in a way coordinated or cooperated with his operation, such as the Dominican Republic and even El Salvador, since there was a flow of some aircraft to the 1st Air Brigade here, adding to that, plus the Democrats really hate Bukele.
Yeah, and not just that, but he's setting precedents for the Democrats to do similar things to other countries. I mean, countries in Europe, they're constantly overturning elections, like in Romania, because they don't like the candidate that won because they're not ideologically aligned with the European Union. So, I mean, Trump is setting precedents not just on what he did in Venezuela, but that story that we said earlier, where he's trying to expand the definition of what a domestic terrorist is, that can create a police state within the U.S. And if the Democrats get back in power, that's going to be really bad news, because they tried to do that themselves last time. And now that groundwork's already kind of laid for them.
Walker says, and again, it doesn't show up, sorry, it says, Diaz-Canel said there were no Cuban military personnel in Venezuela, and the USA said 32 Cuban military personnel were obliterated in Venezuela. So which one is it? And they will always continue to lie, of course.
I heard there was between 80 and 100 Venezuelan personnel
Cuban personnel in Venezuela.
Oh, okay.
Because Diaz-Canel, the guy from Cuba, the dictator from Cuba, said that there were no military personnel. Sorry. Yeah, so there were no military personnel in Venezuela, and then the USA came out to say 32 Cuban military personnel.
Yeah, a lot of his
killed.
personal bodyguards were actually all from Cuba. So
Walker says, I've heard that some Venezuelans agree with her because Maria Corina Machado comes from the center left, so they prefer someone from the right. They wanted her because there was no one better. And again, in Latin America, center left essentially just means right to most of these insane people. Here in Mexico, there is no conservative party. There are no conservatives. There is no right. And if you go slightly further to the center from the left, you're labeled far right, but it doesn't exist here. And it is the same in a lot of these countries. So in a way, yes, she was further to the right than the insane communist dictators. Of course
Well,
she was.
Trump has a different kind of economic model, whether that's tariffs or the way he's trying to make trade partners or ideological partners. Globalists have a completely different vision. If a globalist candidate gets in there, that's going to mean the International Monetary Fund, the EU, they're going to want to indebt this country so they have complete control over it. I mean, this is what always is their game plan. Just give them massive amounts of loans they can never pay back. And when they want them to do something, then they're going to be forced to do it.
Mm-hmm. And
so
then,
I don't know what Trump's economic model that's going to be for Venezuela, but it can't be any worse than what the globalists are going to try to do.
Of course not. And I do think, again, they might be able to restart the whole industry, the petroleum industry, gas industry? How would you say it? The gas industry that they had already built there initially, because the US was the one that helped them get to that level of wealth and privilege within Latin American countries because of how they helped them with the infrastructure initially. Now they can come back and start that again.
Yeah, and I mean, just look what Trump's trying to do in the EU. He's trying to pressure social media companies into the EU and pressure free speech because they're banning it all over the place. The EU's a lot stronger country, so they're trying to resist, saying, no, we don't want free speech. Free speech is going to absolutely explode in Central and South America if Trump has any say over it, especially with these social media companies.
Hopefully.
Okay.
And Rafa comes to your defense and says, no, we love you, guy. You are funny.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are. I find you very funny.
When I yell or when?
No, I find your stupidity sometimes very funny. He is funny. He's just shy, in my opinion. Ethel says, be careful while talking about Mexico too loud. Don't forget that you're still in Mexico, guys. Knock, knock, open up. It's your favorite government people. I think we're still small enough that they don't care. But I mean, we have seen Claudia Sheinbaum and her minions expose people during her morning conferences, very similar to what Maduro and Chavez did in Venezuela as well, where they go on TV every morning and talk for hours.
Well, and I think Nat's a lot more hard on the Morena administration than I am. Ideologically,
they're from here.
Well, ideologically, they're far left, and I don't like them for a lot of cultural reasons. But there are certain things that I constantly point out, like the 2 ports they made with the connecting train that's now rivaling the Panama Canal.
The train just derailed. Part of that train and then other projects similar to it.
Also the cooperation Claudia Sheinbaum has been doing with Trump to try to get a tariff deal. Canada has taken the exact opposite stance. So I do like the fact that she is willing to cooperate. I think there are some red lines she's not going to be able to do because she does have other masters in the cartel where she's not going to be able to go all the way down that road.
That was it for comments.
Okay,
let's continue going because
let's continue.
On my Spanish show.
We only have a few. Let's do one story for each.
Okay, which one do you want from Europe?
Just the first one.
Okay.
Oh yeah, the first one for sure.
Okay, let me go to the Europe. And it is, of course, Brigitte Macron and France because Candy Cane came back and talked about it a little bit. From Xavier Pouzard, which I think is one of the sources from the Candace ads as well. 11 French citizens have just been convicted of cyberbullying. Brigitte Macron, she bizarrely explained yesterday on CF1 that the prosecution in the Jean-Michel Trogneau case was intended to set an example in order to help teenagers.
Yeah, and let's just go back up to the top for a second. Now, she was able to get these convictions based upon cyberbullying, not because she's not a man, but because she felt bullied by the comments. So she hasn't been forced to defend this in court. Now, I know Candace is trying to get the case thrown out, which she said she wouldn't do in the United States. Now she is. That being said, I want to see that case go through because I want to see some kind of blood analysis or something come out on her. I truly do believe that she is probably most likely a man. And even if she's not a man, she's definitely a PDF file. And there are a lot of crazy things going on with the elites in Europe, especially in France.
I mean, in that case, I do agree. There are weird things going on, and she is creepy.
And I'm not sure if she speaks English. Just play the beginning.
Un mot du procès concernant la rumeur.
Okay, it is in French.
But I mean, again, even if I don't agree, she might be a man or she is a woman, whatever. The concerning part is the whole cyberbullying part of this story and the wanting to actually go after citizens for expressing an opinion online. And we see that happening in the UK as well and all over Europe.
The last article in the European section we need, because I talked about it earlier, but I have to show it now.
Okay. Oh, okay. From our Tap Media, on August 11th, 2015, Chrystia Freeland discusses replacing Ukraine's judiciary and government with foreign globalist actors. Today, Freeland's dreams have become reality.
Yeah, and she used to be the finance minister in Canada. She has massive connections to Ukraine. She's been funneling a lot of money going around the world helping raise money. She now holds a high-ranking position in Ukraine through the Canadian government. We'll just listen to what she says here, but...
And I think something that as a Roma that we have to get over is maybe Ukraine fatigue. I genuinely believe that Ukraine now has turned a new page. And I really think that this is the moment when Ukraine is really turning onto the right path. I don't think we should be naive about it. It's not, it's far from perfect. Yvonne talked about the reforms. And, of course, those reforms are incomplete. Of course, there is still corruption in Ukraine. And of course, there is increasingly popular dissatisfaction with the government because the structural economic reforms.
She just said we've turned a new leaf. We have the best government in Ukraine now that we've ever had. Yes, of course, there's still corruption here. Like there's billions of dollars going into this country. I truly believe if there was no corruption, the war would have got a lot different there.
Are very painful. But I really believe this is the best government Ukraine has had in its entire history. So I think all of us should be thinking of where can we connect. And I'll give 3 quick ideas. The first comes from Petro Poroshenko. And I talked to him just before the presidential election. And he said to me, how many Ukrainian Canadian judges are there in Canada? I had no idea. He said, well, do you know how many Ukrainian Canadian judges there are in Canada who speak Ukrainian? I also said I had no idea. He said, well, I have this idea. The way we would get rid of corruption is have our whole Supreme Court be staffed by Ukrainian Canadian judges. And I thought he was joking. But look, he has the public UNESCO as his minister of finance.
Even her own liberal base there is absolutely laughing at her. They know corruption runs deep, not only within Ukraine, but within general political Ukrainian culture. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go on to Asia now, if we can. There's only one story in Asia, and that I think it's a pretty big story because a lot of what happened in Venezuela had a huge effect when it comes to China. Now, I don't think it was the primary effect, and I do see a lot of commentators saying this had everything to do with China and nothing else. I don't think that's the case.
So what is it about? Hold on. There we go. From Mala Joe, China went to meet with Maduro today to discuss joining forces. Then Trump captures Maduro the same day. And they were kind of stuck there, too.
Yeah, and this clip was from a couple of days ago. But I had already put it on here. But we'll talk a little bit about China and the Venezuela implications.
So the irony.
Trae muy buenos recuerdos. Feliz año. El año del caballo, ¿verdad? Yo fui tigre, tú, tanto tiempo. Yo lo conocí a él muy joven, muy joven.
Okay. And literally that night they came in, took Maduro. The Chinese officials were trapped in the country. They were trapped in the country for a few days after that. China wanted to say how the U.S. is disregarding international law. That's really funny coming from them, considering just 5 days ago, they absolutely surrounded Taiwan with hundreds of ships and went into the airspace with jets. So they're not respecting international law, not just with Taiwan, but fishing vessels around the world on a daily basis are going off the coasts, whether it's Chile, whether it's Argentina. We're talking about thousands of ships are strip fishing these coasts. These are not their resources to take. They're not respecting international law. So for them to say that the United States isn't, yeah.
I'm glad they got trapped there for a bit, but it is ironic that they were like there and saying, oh, I met him when he was very young. Oh, I missed you. How was your New Year? And then that same night, they were trying to collude, and we know why China was there and what they're doing there. In comes, away goes Maduro.
There's been a few tariff deals that have gone through with the United States and China. The rumor behind the scenes is right now, Trump is trying to negotiate what's called the Great Deal. It's going to impact what the multipolar world sphere of influences will be. Trump wants to lay claim to the Western Hemisphere, and I know they do not want to give up Taiwan, and I know Japan is not going to want to be in the Chinese sphere of influence. So it's going to be very interesting if he can work something out. But the more things that happen like Venezuela, where he doesn't get in forever wars, he makes a strategic plucking of Maduro. This gives him a good advantage in those negotiations. Okay. And we're going to go to the Middle East now.
Sure, let's just power through these.
And that was the one national anthem we couldn't actually find a good one on.
No, there were a few we couldn't find. We might change it so the actual audio that plays during the videotapes is funny or in a way mocking whatever country we're talking about, but not yet because we couldn't find one for all of them. But I'm sure we will find, or someone will find funny audio for this guy that so many people hate. Jake Shields says, quote, Netanyahu talks how he wants to control all of the media and social media in America so he can end our First Amendment.
Yeah, and this was concerning because the last time we went into the Middle East was on the last show. Two very high-ranking Israeli officials were talking about how they need to control social media. And they were just talking outright about how to take away free speech. And now this is kind of being reconfirmed by Netanyahu here. I think they need to take another position on this, especially if they want to try to win hearts and minds.
Christian influencers. He said, talked about the woke right. And he said, I call it the woke right. That's a brilliant. The woke right. Because these people, they're not any different from the woke left. I mean, they're insane. They're but they're actually meeting some of the things. And what we have to do is we have to secure that part of the base of our support in the United States. That is being challenged systematically. A lot of this is done with money. Money of NGOs, fast. Money of governments, faster. Okay? We have to fight back. How do we fight back? Our influencers. I think you should also talk to them if you have a chance. To that community. They're very important. And secondly, we're going to have to use the tools of battle. The weapons change over time. You can't fight today with swords. That doesn't work very well. Okay? And you can't fight with cavalry. That doesn't work very well. You have these new things, like drones, things like that. I won't get into that. But we have to fight with the weapons that apply to the battlefields in which we're engaged. And the most important ones are the social media. The most important purchase that is going on right now is TikTok, number one. And I hope it goes through because it's can be consequential. And the other one, what's the other one that's most important? X. That's very good. And, so we have to talk to Elon. He's not an enemy. He's a friend. We should talk to him. Now, if we can get those two things, we get a lot. And I could go on other things, but that's not the point right now. We have to fight the fight. Okay? To give direction to the Jewish people and give direction to our non-Jewish friends, those who could be.
Okay, that's good. Well, what does he mean by we need to take X? If X is free speech, I like it just the way it is. I know it's not complete free speech, but what does he mean by we need to take X? That means we need more censorship. We need specialty classes so we can't say certain things. Like every country in the world is trying to censor speech right now, whether that's the EU, whether it's Israel, whether it's Australia, Canada. The only country that's really pushing back is the United States. And it's really the only thing holding the dam right now. I think it's very important with all these countries bringing all these censorship laws, all these specialty groups, all these protected classes, all these hate speech laws in order to take away free speech. If Trump can really make an impact on the Western Hemisphere, a lot of the Western Hemisphere is going right now. And if they can implement free speech into their constitutions, into their legislation, and really allow social media to run free, you're at least going to have half of the world that still maintains free speech because the rest of the world doesn't seem to want it anymore, or at least the elites. A lot of the citizens do.
Yeah, and are willing to go fight for it as well.
Yeah. Okay, let's go into the last story of the day, and that is Africa.
And do you want to intro it or just go into it?
Oh, you can just go right into it here.
From Basil the Great, quote, wow, listen to this call between a lefty liberal and a native African. Louis Goodell's head explodes when he blamed Africa's woes on European colonization, but the African man says it's the opposite and wants Africa to be recolonized.
Anyway, Sam is in Accent. Let's talk to him first. Sam, your views on Trump and Venezuela?
Many are claiming that Trump is recolonizing Venezuela. If recolonization by Trump means peace, stability, and prosperity, so be it. I would like Trump, in fact, to extend his hands and go to my native Africa. Many of the countries in Africa today, failed states. They are sinking under the mountain of corruption and population explosion. This is causing a crisis that is driving millions to come abroad to look for a better life. We need to be recolonized.
Of course, Sam, many would argue, including lots of rather eminent historians and economists, among others, that it is colonization, and European colonization, that was at least a significant part of the contemporary political problems of many of the states that you were talking about.
It is the opposite. If Africa was never colonized, where would we be?
Well, there were plenty of countries that weren't colonized. Japan wasn't colonized, and they're doing all right.
Well, they're doing all right, but not Africa.
Right. Well, there are countries which were colonized that are doing well, and some that weren't and aren't. So I'm not sure.
Sorry to interrupt you. I'm talking from personal experience.
Yes,
I was there when the British were there.
I mean, America quite literally had a colony in the United States, in Africa, called Liberia, which has had plenty of problems. So I'm not necessarily sure that recolonization will do terribly well.
What has happened since the American and the British left Africa? In chaos.
Right, okay. Well, Sam, it's a view, and grateful for it. Let's turn now to Lisa Smart, who is a Cabinet Office spokesperson for the Lib Dems, of course.
It's a shame that that gentleman's picture was there. He's a lefty, but there's somebody named Kenneth Woods who's from Ireland, and he's hard right political commentator in the independent media space, so I absolutely like, but they look exactly the same. I actually thought that was Kenneth Woods until he started speaking. That being said, there's a lot of Africans that come out just speak plainly, and it's often very funny. There was a White House journalist that was from Africa during the Biden administration, and they had to ban him because he was just asking questions that the administration did not like at the time.
But I mean, how dare this white man from colonial man not listen to the lived experience of an African man that has lived there. That is the framework that they would give. But now when it gets uncomfortable and your puppets are not saying what you want them to say and what is convenient to you and your ideology, then he mutes him and moves on. So we've seen a lot of mask off moments, especially now with the Venezuela thing, with the actual things that liberals are espousing, even Kamala and Biden coming out and saying that, oh, international law, this is terrible, blah, 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 when they had a bounty also on Maduro's head of about 50 million or something like that dollars during their administration. That a year ago they came out with that. So it's like they completely forgotten about it. And I think a lot of people might further realize what they have been supporting, but others will just double down and be stupid.
Yeah, and the whole show we've been talking about Maduro and this through line of Maduro. I know I have a different take than most other people because I'm looking at the left and I'm looking at the right, and they're talking about how this is a forever war. This is a war. This is not justified. Internationally, he's breaking international law. International law is in contradiction. He's given 5 reasons based upon international law why he was allowed to go in there. Now, I can see the case being made. That being said, this was not a forever war. It hasn't turned into that yet. We have to wait to see. I think we need to not only wait and see what happens if he puts boots on the ground, which I will not support him if he does that. That being said, we need to look at Venezuela as the model, and I'm sure Trump is. He wants to see success there economically. He's going to probably slowly release all the sanctions. We should see a revitalization of the country. If it works there, it can work in a lot of other countries that have fallen victim to socialism, such as Cuba. And I mean, if Venezuela has a uprising of their economy to an extreme extent, which is a good possibility they will, the Cuban people are going to be looking at Venezuela and thinking revolution.
Maybe. But now, moving on to comments before we go, because it is 10:10, and I allegedly have to do a show in Spanish later today. We'll see how long that one goes for. But Wig says, be safe out there. Mexico is not really known for their justice and law. Thank you. And I mean, we manage, I guess. But we're small enough where nobody pays attention to us, luckily, here
we
in
never
Mexico.
leave the house.
That's it. Rafa says, average feminist Karen about Chrystia Freeland. So yeah, obviously. And Walker and
well,
Rafa
not even an average. She's not average feminist Karen because she's extremely dangerous. She's controlling billions of dollars from countries that are hurting the citizens of those countries, and there's thousands of other Chrystia Freelands in politics that are doing the exact same thing.
Wig says, and it won't show up, I'm sorry, says, I'm tired of Candace muddying the waters. She is low IQ and dishonest. She thought UT time meant Utah time. She can't even read. I mean, come on, enough is enough. She's Oprah for white wine moms. Just Oprah, essentially.
I'm pretty dumb too. I thought UT time was urinary tract.
That would be UTI, you idiot.
But I was following Candace. Everybody that watches the show knows I was firmly in Candace's camp, and I have come over because it's just gotten too ridiculous.
And I've been...
The goalpost has moved too many times, and until she has actual evidence, if she wants to present something, I'm more than willing to be convinced. But until she has that, I'm waiting for the trial here.
And the worst part is I've been on this through line since months ago, like essentially since you started talking about it during your individual show. You can go back and look at those. But even when you and I were debating, I've continued to say the exact same points and say the exact same errors that
But this is why free speech. This is why free speech is great. I've been able to be convinced. Valhalla has been able to be convinced, and like this is what free speech is supposed to do. And it's kind of working itself out, and this is what we want to see.
Mm-hmm. And Walker says, I think the Chinese weren't very happy with Maduro since he owes them a lot of money. And that is true, but at the same time, they know what's in Venezuela and what can benefit them and how Venezuela has continued to support them with oil and etc.
Yeah, a lot of the black economy ran out of Venezuela through the Chinese. A lot of the gold and silver was coming out of there, and there's not enough actual silver on the market to suffice the world's needs right now. The Bank of London needs silver. Typically they would actually get it from Venezuela that was being secretly shipped in oil tankers in order to supply what they needed to dish out to the rest of the world. Most people used to buy their silver from organized banks within the city of London and the UK. Now they're having to go directly to the mines in Mexico. At least Samsung did about a month ago.
And then Wig says shows, but I don't know what that means. So shows. And
Show's
then
over.
Rafa says he belongs to his father, the devil, about Netanyahu.
Yeah.
Because I know Rafa doesn't like him.
Yeah, and like Netanyahu has done nothing good for that country. He's starting 7 wars. He's going against free speech on a global basis. He's systematically turning the world against Israel. If they had a better leader who wasn't trying to strip the world of free speech, and he wasn't starting 7 conflicts and was trying to build economic bridges, people could accept 1 or 2 conflicts maybe if they could actually justify it.
And Ethel says there's not enough Ukrainians in Canada anymore. Anyway, Canada will sooner have all Indian or CCP judges than Ukrainians. Freeland has lost, but not the way we wanted.
Yeah, there's quite a few Ukrainians. I actually used to work with quite a few, and they were getting refugee status and things like that. It was one of the big countries they were coming to, and they actually integrated fairly well because they had a similar...
better than the Muslims.
They had a similar moral culture coming from Christianity. So that being said, Canada is starting to turn Muslim, so maybe they're not so well integrated.
Yeah, but I guess that is the show.
Okay, thanks for tuning in.
Yes, thank you so much. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really does help us. We are pretty close. We need 1,000 subscribers so we can monetize this channel as well. And now I might be going over to the Spanish channel for just very quickly because it's already 10 p.m. here in Mexico City, but we'll see.
Maybe at 10:40. We have to let the cameras cool a little bit.
Probably 11:15.
And okay.
So Rafa Walker about 11. And it'll be quick.
And there was one more thing I was going to say. No, I forgot.
Thank you so much. Have a great start of
we didn't go to Rumble today.
No.
Because the audio we're having audio issues over there.
Yes, but thank you so much. Have a great start of your week, and we'll see you on Wednesday.